The Michelin-starred restaurant's crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across Isabella Grant's face as she stared at the text message that shattered her already fragile hope. "Sorry, can't make it. This isn't going to work out." 2 years in a wheelchair, and she'd finally let someone convince her to try again, only to be rejected before the man even saw her. But as tears threatened to fall, a stranger in oil-stained jeans walked through those gilded doors, about to turn her disaster into destiny. Stay with me until the end of this incredible journey, and don't forget to comment your city below. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled to reach you. The November rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Le Bernardin's private dining room, each droplet racing down the glass, like the tears Isabella Grant refused to let fall. She sat perfectly still in her custom-designed wheelchair, a $50,000 piece of engineering that was supposed to make her feel less broken, but somehow only emphasized what she'd lost. Her reflection stared back from the rain-streaked glass-sharp cheekbones, meticulously styled auburn hair, and eyes that had forgotten how to hope. 31 years old, she whispered to herself, adjusting the emerald necklace that had been her mother's. CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and I'm sitting here waiting for a man my assistant had to bribe into meeting me. The maitre d' approached with practiced discretion, his footsteps barely audible on the imported Italian marble. "Ms. Grant, shall I bring the wine selection while you wait for your companion?" Isabella glanced at her phone, 7:47 p.m. Marcus was already 17 minutes late. "Just water, Felipe. Thank you." Philippe nodded and retreated, leaving Isabella alone with the weight of her decision to come here tonight. It had taken Sarah, her executive assistant, 3 months of gentle persuasion and not-so-gentle nagging to convince her to try this blind date. Marcus Wellington, investment banker, Harvard MBA, comes from old money. On paper, he was perfect. Sarah had shown her his photo, classically handsome, with the kind of confident smile that suggested he'd never known real failure. "He knows about the chair," Sarah had assured her. "I was completely transparent about your situation. He said it doesn't matter to him." But sitting here now, watching the empty chair across from her mock her, with its wholeness, Isabella wondered if anything Sarah said was true. Her fingers traced the armrests of her wheelchair, feeling the smooth carbon fiber that had become as familiar as her own skin over the past 2 years. The accident played in her mind like a movie she couldn't pause. The 18-wheeler that had run the red light. The sound of crushing metal. The moment she realized she couldn't feel her legs. The doctor's voice, carefully neutral, explaining that her L2 and L3 vertebrae were shattered, that she'd never walk again. The word paralyzed echoing in the sterile hospital room while her entire world collapsed. Her phone buzzed. Finally. Marcus. But as she read the message, something inside her, something she'd been carefully protecting since the accident, finally broke. "Sorry, can't make it. Had time to think about it, and this isn't going to work out. Hope you understand. Best of luck." The words blurred as her eyes filled with tears. She'd sworn she wouldn't cry anymore. He hadn't even had the courage to call. Just a text. A coward's goodbye before hello. "Bastard," she muttered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Miss Grant." Felipe had returned with her water, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes kind. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Isabella lied, her CEO voice sliding into place like armor. "My companion won't be joining me. I'll take the check for the reservation fee." "There's no charge, Ms. Grant. Would you like me to arrange for James to bring the car around?" James, her driver. Another reminder of all the things she couldn't do anymore. She couldn't drive herself. Couldn't walk into a restaurant without calling ahead to ensure wheelchair access. Couldn't even go on a blind date without being rejected by someone who'd never even met her. "Not yet," she said, surprising herself. I'll stay for a moment." Philippe nodded and discreetly withdrew. Isabella turned her chair slightly to face the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain and her tears. This was why she'd buried herself in work for 2 years. Grant Innovations had become her life, her refuge, her reason to get up each morning. In the boardroom, her wheelchair disappeared. She was just Isabella Grant, the brilliant strategist who doubled the company's value in 18 months. But here in this romantic restaurant, with its soft lighting and intimate corners, she was just a woman in a wheelchair who'd been stood up by a stranger who couldn't even face her. The sound of commotion from the main dining room pulled her from her spiral of self-pity. Raised voices, the maitre d's urgent French, and then, "Look, I know I don't have a reservation, but I'm supposed to meet someone here. A blind date. My sister set it up. Can you just check?" The voice was deep, slightly rough around the edges, with a hint of Brooklyn that the expensive suits in this place probably found offensive. Isabella turned her chair slightly, peering through the etched glass partition that separated the private dining room from the main restaurant. A man stood at the host station, looking spectacularly out of place. He wore dark jeans, clean but clearly well worn, and a button-down shirt that might have been white once but had faded to a soft gray. His hair was dark, slightly too long, curling at the collar, but it was his hands that caught her attention. They were moving as he talked, expressive and strong, with the kind of calluses that spoke of real work, not gym equipment. "Sir, I'm afraid without a reservation," the maitre d' was saying. "The name would be under Jessica Carter. She said she made it for 7:30. I know I'm late, my truck broke down on the FDR. And have you ever tried to get a cab in this rain? Look, she's probably already here. Probably thinks I'm standing her up." Isabella watched as he ran one of those calloused hands through his hair, leaving it slightly disheveled. There was something about his desperation, his genuine distress at the thought of disappointing someone, that made her chest tighten. "I don't see a reservation under Carter," the maitre d' said firmly. "Perhaps you have the wrong restaurant." No, she definitely said Le Bernardin. The fancy fish place on West 51st. She even sent me a screenshot. He pulled out his phone, an older model with a cracked screen, and started scrolling frantically. "Here, see Le Bernardin, 7:30 p.m. table for 2. The maitre d' examined the screen with the expression of someone handling questionable evidence. "Sir, this reservation appears to be for next Thursday." The man's face fell. "Next? What? Thursday, November 21st. Today is the 14th. Isabella watched the realization wash over his face, embarrassment, frustration, and something else. Relief. "Jessica's going to kill me," he muttered. Then louder, "I'm sorry for the confusion. I'll just—" He turned to leave, and Isabella made a decision that would later seem like fate, but in that moment felt like pure impulse. She wheeled herself out of the private dining room and into the main restaurant. "Excuse me." Both men turned. The maitre d' immediately straightened. "Ms. Grant, is there something?" But Isabella was looking at the stranger whose eyes had widened slightly as he took in her wheelchair. Not with pity or discomfort, she noted, but with simple acknowledgement. "I couldn't help overhearing," she said. "Your sister set you up on a blind date." "Yeah." He admitted that, hand going through his hair again. "Jessica works in accounting at some tech company. She's always trying to set me up with her coworkers. Says I need to meet someone with ambition and intelligence." He made air quotes, and a small self-deprecating smile tugged at his lips. "Guess it doesn't matter since I can't even get the day right." Isabella's heart was pounding. This was insane. But she heard herself saying, "Grant Innovations, your sister works at Grant Innovations." His eyes sharpened with interest. "Yeah, actually, you know it? You could say that." She took a breath. "I'm Isabella Grant. I own it." The silence stretched for a moment. Then he laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine surprise and delight. "No kidding, Jessica's going to have a heart attack when she finds out I met the actual boss." "Well," Isabella said, feeling reckless, feeling brave, feeling something other than broken for the first time in 2 years. "It seems we've both been stood up. Your date is next week and mine just canceled by text. Would you like to join me? I hate to waste a perfectly good reservation." He studied her for a moment, and she braced for the excuses, the polite decline. But then he grinned, and it transformed his face from handsome to absolutely magnetic. "Ethan," he said, extending his hand. "Ethan Carter. And I should probably warn you, I don't know anything about fancy fish. I'm more of a pizza and beer guy." She took his hand, noting the warmth, the strength, the way he adjusted his grip to accommodate the angle of her reach from the chair. "Isabella, and between you and me, I'd kill for a good pizza right now." "Philippe," she said, turning to the maitre d', "we'll be leaving after all." Philippe's expression was priceless, a mixture of surprise and disapproval that he couldn't quite hide. "Of course, Ms. Grant. Shall I call for James?" "No," she said, looking at Ethan. "I think we'll figure it out." Ethan's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "My truck's outside. Fair warning, it's not exactly luxury transportation. It's a '78 Ford that I've been restoring. She's got character, but she's not pretty." "Does she have character enough for a wheelchair?" "I've hauled engines bigger than that chair," he said easily. "Plus, I installed a running board last month. Should make it easier." They made their way through the restaurant, Isabella acutely aware of the stares the CEO of Grant Innovations leaving with a man in jeans and work boots. But Ethan seemed oblivious to the attention, or maybe he just didn't care. He held doors without making a production of it, walked at her pace without making her feel rushed. And when they reached the street, he jogged ahead to pull his truck around while she waited under the awning with Felipe. "Ms. Grant," Felipe said quietly, "are you certain about this?" She looked at him, this man who'd served her family for years, who'd watched her come here with her father when she could still walk, who'd sent flowers to her hospital room after the accident. "No," she admitted. "But that's rather the point, isn't it?" The truck that pulled up was as promised not pretty. It was hulking and blue with patches of primer where Ethan had clearly been doing bodywork. But it rumbled with the sound of a perfectly tuned engine, and when Ethan jumped out to help her, she saw the pride in his eyes as he looked at it. "She's a work in progress," he said, almost apologetically. "Aren't we all?" Isabella replied. Getting into the truck required more physical contact than Isabella had had with anyone outside of medical professionals in 2 years. Ethan's solution was straightforward. He simply asked, "May I?" And when she nodded, lifted her from the chair to the passenger seat, as if she weighed nothing. His arms were strong, steady, and he smelled like motor oil and something clean like rain. "Comfortable?" he asked, making sure she was settled before folding her wheelchair with practiced efficiency and securing it in the truck bed. "Yes," she said, and realized she meant it. The bench seat was worn soft, and the cab smelled like leather conditioner and WD-40. It was about as far from her Tesla's interior as possible, and yet she felt more at ease than she had in months. Ethan climbed in and started the engine. "So pizza, I know a place in Brooklyn that'll blow your mind. Fair warning, it's a dive. Plastic tablecloths, fluorescent lighting, and the owner's grandmother yells at you in Italian if you don't finish your crust. Sounds perfect, Isabella said, and meant it. As they drove through the rain-slicked streets, the city lights blurring past, Ethan told her about the truck. How he'd found it rusting in a barn upstate, had spent 3 years bringing it back to life. His hands moved as he talked, gesturing at the dashboard. He'd restored the seats, he'd reupholstered himself. You really love this truck, Isabella observed. She was my dad's, Ethan said quietly. Same model, same year. He had one when I was a kid, used to let me help him work on it. When he passed 5 years ago, I started looking for one just like it. Took me 2 years to find her, another 3 to get her running right. I'm sorry about your father. Thanks. He would have gotten a kick out of tonight, me picking up the CEO of a Fortune 500 company in his old truck. He glanced at her, grinning. No offense. None taken. Although I have to ask, Jessica really didn't tell you who she was setting you up with. She said it was someone from work who was brilliant, successful, and needed to meet someone real. He snorted. I figured she meant someone from accounting or IT. She didn't mention the brilliant and successful part meant running the whole company. Would it have mattered? He considered this, navigating through traffic with easy confidence. Honestly, probably would have made me more nervous. But not for the reasons you might think. Oh. Look, I'm not intimidated by success. Good for you building something amazing. But Jessica's been trying to set me up with her ambitious friends for years, and usually that means people who look at me and see a project. Like I'm some fixer-upper they can renovate into husband material. Isabella laughed, surprising herself. Like your truck? Exactly like my truck. Except I actually wanted to be restored. I'm pretty happy with my original parts, you know. They pulled up outside a narrow restaurant squeezed between a laundromat and a check cashing place. The neon sign reading Geno's flickered intermittently, and through the steamy windows, Isabella could see a crowd that looked like it had been there since the place opened in what must have been the 1960s. This is it, Ethan said, and she could hear the slight uncertainty in his voice. We can go somewhere else if you'd prefer. Ethan, she interrupted. Get my chair. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and smelling of wet concrete. Ethan retrieved her wheelchair and helped her into it with the same matter-of-fact efficiency as before. But when they reached the door, they both saw the problem at the same time, 3 steep steps up no ramp. Shit, Ethan muttered. I didn't think. I'm sorry, we should go somewhere else. Or, Isabella said, you could carry me. He looked at her, really looked at her. You sure? I've been carried into boardrooms in Tokyo, Ethan. I think I can manage a pizza place in Brooklyn. This time, when he lifted her, she let herself notice things, the way his breathing didn't even change, despite her weight, the careful way he held her protective without being possessive. Inside, he set her gently in a booth before going back for her chair, folding it and propping it against the wall like it was the most natural thing in the world. The restaurant was exactly as advertised, harsh lighting, ancient decor, and the smell of garlic so strong it was almost visible. A tiny Italian woman who had to be 90 if she was a day shuffled over, took one look at Ethan, and launched into rapid Italian. She's asking why I haven't been here in 3 weeks. Ethan translated, looking slightly embarrassed. Nonna, this is Isabella. Isabella, this is Nonna Rosa. She practically raised me after my mom died. Isabella's mental file on Ethan Carter suddenly expanded. Father dead 5 years ago, mother also gone, raised partially by the grandmother of a pizza shop owner. She extended her hand. Piacere di conoscerla, Nonna Rosa. The old woman's eyes lit up. Ah, you speak Italian better than this one. She swatted Ethan's arm. His Italian is terrible. His father, God rest his soul, he spoke beautiful Italian. but this one managgia. My Italian is functional, Ethan protested. Your Italian is offensive to the language. Nonna Rosa shot back, but her eyes were fond. I bring you the usual. Isabella, Ethan asked. You trust me? There was something about the way he asked, casual but sincere, that made her answer without hesitation. Yes. Nonna Rosa shuffled away, muttering in Italian about young people and trust, and something about finally bringing a nice girl around. Isabella caught enough to blush. So, Ethan said, leaning back in the cracked vinyl booth. Isabella Grant, CEO. How does that happen? The short version, my father built the company I grew up in. It took over when he retired 3 years ago. That's the resume version. What's the real version? Nobody had asked her for the real version in so long she'd almost forgotten it existed. The real version is that I was supposed to be a dancer. His eyebrows rose. No kidding. Ballet. I was good too. Juilliard good. But when I was 18, my father had a heart attack. Minor, but it scared him. Scared me. I switched to business school, started learning the company. Figured I could always dance on the side. But you didn't. No time. The company became everything. And then, she gestured at her legs. Doesn't matter now anyway. Why not? The question threw her. I can't exactly do grand jetés from a wheelchair. No, but you could choreograph, teach, direct, if you wanted to. She stopped. No one had ever suggested that before. In 2 years of therapy and recovery, not one person had mentioned that dance could still be part of her life. I hadn't thought about it. People rarely do. Think about things I mean. They just assume once plan A fails, that's it. Game over. He shrugged. I've rebuilt enough engines to know there's always another way to make something run. Nonna Rosa returned with a tray laden with food that could have fed a small army. Pizza with a crust so thin it was almost transparent, dripping with fresh mozzarella. Arancini golden and perfect. A salad that was mostly fresh mozzarella and tomatoes. And a bottle of wine that looked older than the restaurant. The good wine, Ethan asked, surprised. You finally bring a nice girl, you get the good wine, Nonna Rosa declared, pouring generous glasses. Saluti! As they ate, Ethan told her about his work. He owned a small garage in Queens, specialized in classic car restoration. His eyes lit up when he talked about it, hands moving to illustrate the process of rebuilding an engine. The satisfaction of hearing a motor purr after months of work. It's not Fortune 500 money, he said without apology or shame. But it's mine. Built it from nothing after Dad died. He always said, if you can't fix something with your own hands, you don't really own it. That's actually beautiful, Isabella said, and she meant it. When was the last time she'd built something with her own hands? Even Grant Innovations had been handed to her, albeit with the expectation she'd make it better. But she'd never started from nothing, never had grease under her fingernails, or the satisfaction of bringing something dead back to life. You think so? Most of the women Jessica sets me up with think it's quaint. Like I'm playing at being a mechanic until I grow up and get a real job. And what's a real job? Apparently something that requires a tie and an office with windows, Isabella laughed. I have an office with windows. Floor-to-ceiling ones, actually. View of the whole city. And sometimes I sit at those windows and watch the city below and feel like I'm in a very expensive prison. The honesty of it shocked her. She hadn't admitted that to anyone, barely admitted it to herself. Ethan studied her over his wine glass. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it was good for the company or expected of you? Tonight, she said without thinking. His smile was slow and warm. Good answer. They talked until the restaurant started emptying, until Nonna Rosa started pointedly wiping down nearby tables. About everything and nothing. Movies he loved old westerns. She preferred sci-fi books. They both read voraciously, though his tastes ran more toward biographies while she favored fiction, travel. He'd barely left New York, she'd been everywhere but never really seen anything beyond conference rooms. I should probably get you home, Ethan finally said, checking his watch. It's almost midnight. You probably have early meetings and important CEO stuff. Actually, tomorrow's Saturday. CEOs get weekends. This one's trying to. She hesitated, then plunged forward. Would you like to do something tomorrow together, I mean? He looked genuinely surprised. You want to see me again? Unless this is just your charity case for the week. Take out the poor paralyzed girl who got stood up. Stop. His voice was firm but kind. First, you're nobody's charity case. Second, that asshole who stood you up is an idiot. Third, I absolutely want to see you again. But I figured after tonight, you'd go back to your world, and I'd go back to mine, and we'd have this one perfect evening to remember. Why would you figure that? He gestured between them. Come on, Isabella. Look at us. You run a Fortune 500 company. I fix cars. You probably have a penthouse and a driver and I'm in a wheelchair, she finished quietly. That's not what I was going to say. But you thought it. No, he said firmly. What I thought was that you're brilliant and beautiful, and so far out of my league it's not even funny. The chair doesn't change that. If anything, it makes you more impressive. You could have hidden away after your accident. Instead, you're out here running a company, going on blind dates, eating pizza in Brooklyn dives. That takes guts. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. Most people see the chair first. Most people are idiots. He paused. Though I'll admit, I did notice it. Kind of hard not to. But you want to know what I noticed more? What? The way you held yourself. Like you were ready for a fight. Like you expected me to disappoint you. He leaned forward. I don't want to disappoint you, Isabella. The drive back to Manhattan was quiet but comfortable. Ethan had put on an old blues station, and the music mixed with the rumble of the truck's engine and the sound of tires on wet asphalt. Isabella found herself stealing glances at him, at the way the streetlights played across his profile, at his hands steady on the wheel. This is me, she said, when they reached her building, a gleaming tower on the Upper East Side. Ethan whistled low. And she actually lives in a penthouse. I was just guessing about that. Top floor anyway, she admitted. He helped her out of the truck and into her chair with the same easy grace as before. But when they reached the building's entrance with its doorman and marble lobby visible beyond the glass, he hesitated. So about tomorrow. Pick me up at 10, Isabella suggested, and wear something you can get dirty. Dirty? You said you're restoring a car, right? I want to see your garage, your world. His face lit up. You want to see the garage? Unless that's weird. No, it's just, nobody's ever asked to see it before. Dates usually want to go somewhere nice, somewhere impressive. Ethan, Isabella said. I've been to every impressive place in this city. Show me something real. He leaned down then, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. But instead, he just touched her hand where it rested on her wheelchair's control. 10 o'clock. I'll bring coffee. How do you know I drink coffee? You run a tech company. If you don't have a caffeine addiction, you're doing it wrong. She laughed and he stepped back, heading for his truck. At the door, he turned. Isabella, thank you for tonight. Thank you for not being next Thursday. His laughter followed her into the building, warm and genuine. In the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked different. Softer somehow. Less like a CEO and more like a woman who'd just had her first real date in 2 years. Her phone buzzed. Sarah, of course. "How did it go with Marcus? Did he sweep you off your feet?" Isabella typed back. "He didn't show, but someone else did." 3 dots appeared immediately. "What? Who? Tell me everything." "Tomorrow. Tonight I just want to remember." She turned off her phone before Sarah could respond. In her apartment, everything was exactly as she'd left it. Pristine, modern, untouched. The space suddenly felt too large, too empty, too perfect. She wheeled herself to the wall of windows that looked out over the city and thought about Ethan's question. When was the last time she'd done something just because she wanted to? Tonight, she'd said. But now she realized that wasn't quite true. Tonight was just the beginning. Her reflection in the window showed her sitting in her wheelchair, but for the first time in 2 years, that wasn't what she saw first. She saw a woman who'd laughed until her sides hurt. A woman who'd eaten too much pizza and drunk wine that probably cost more than most people's rent. A woman who'd been carried upstairs by strong arms and hadn't felt helpless, she'd felt held. Tomorrow she would go to a garage in Queens. She would get her hands dirty. She would learn about carburetors and transmissions and whatever else Ethan wanted to show her. And maybe, just maybe, she would start to rebuild something in herself that had nothing to do with walking and everything to do with living. Outside, it started to rain again, and Isabella smiled. Rain had brought Ethan Carter crashing into Le Bernardin and into her life. His truck was probably halfway to Queens by now, that perfectly tuned engine carrying him through the night, while she sat here in her tower, feeling less alone than she had in years. She thought about Marcus Wellington, the man who was supposed to be perfect on paper. By now, he was probably at some other upscale bar, congratulating himself on dodging a bullet, never knowing what he'd missed. The thought didn't hurt anymore. If he'd shown up, she never would have met Ethan. She never would have gone to Gino's, never would have met Nonna Rosa, never would have discovered that there were still people in the world who could see past the wheelchair to the woman inside. Rolling back from the window, Isabella made her way to her bedroom. The apartment's automated systems turned on lights as she moved state-of-the-art technology responding to her presence. Everything in her life was designed to make her disability easier to manage, to minimize the inconvenience of being paralyzed. But tonight with Ethan, she hadn't felt disabled at all. She just felt like Isabella. As she prepared for bed, she found herself humming something she hadn't done since the accident. It was an old song her father used to play, something about second chances and unexpected gifts. Appropriate, she thought. Her phone, still silenced, showed 17 messages from Sarah, 3 from her CFO about Monday's meeting, and 1 from an unknown number. She opened that one. "Hey, it's Ethan. Got your number from the reservation system. Nonna Rosa has connections everywhere, don't ask. Just wanted to make sure you got in okay and to say thanks again for tonight. Also, fair warning about tomorrow, the garage can be pretty messy. Maybe don't wear anything dry clean only. See you at 10. Isabella smiled, typing back. Made it home safe. And don't worry about the mess. I'm tougher than I look. See you at 10. She hit send before she could overthink it, then added, P.S. Tell Nonna Rosa the wine was perfect. His response came immediately. She says you have good taste and I should marry you before someone smarter comes along. I told her to mind her own business. She hit me with a wooden spoon. Did it hurt? My pride more than anything. But don't tell her that. She's barely 5 feet tall, but she's scary when she's holding kitchen utensils. Isabella laughed alone in her bedroom and realized it was the second time today she'd laughed without forcing it, without it being expected or polite. Just genuine, spontaneous joy. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Isabella. Dream of carburetors and crankshafts. How romantic. You haven't seen anything yet. Tomorrow I'm going to show you the beauty of a perfectly rebuilt 1967 Mustang engine. Can't wait. And the surprising thing was, she meant it. She actually couldn't wait to see his garage, his world, his passion for bringing broken things back to life. Maybe because she was beginning to suspect he might be able to do the same for her, not fix her legs that ship had sailed. But maybe, just maybe, help her rebuild the parts of herself that had nothing to do with walking and everything to do with living. As sleep finally took her, Isabella's last thought was of Ethan's hands, calloused and strong, covered in old scars from years of work, but gentle when they'd lifted her. Hands that knew how to fix things, how to be patient, how to see potential in rust and ruins. Tomorrow, those hands would show her his world. And maybe if she was brave enough, she'd let him see more of hers, not the CEO, not the success story, not the tragedy of the accident. Just Isabella, a woman who was learning that sometimes the best things in life came from the worst disasters, that blind dates could lead to clear sight, and that a mechanic from Brooklyn might just be the missing piece she never knew she needed. The rain continued to fall over Manhattan, washing the city clean for tomorrow's possibilities, and in a penthouse on the Upper East Side. Isabella Grant fell asleep, smiling, her dreams filled not with boardrooms and stock prices, but with the rumble of an old truck's engine and the warmth of unexpected connection. The disaster of her blind date had become the beginning of something she didn't have a name for yet. But for the first time in 2 years, she was excited to find out what came next. The morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for November, the kind of day that made New Yorkers remember why they endured the brutal winters and sweltering summers. Isabella woke before her alarm, something that hadn't happened in years. Usually mornings were a battle against exhaustion, her body fighting the mental toll of maintaining her corporate facade. But today she was awake at 7, alert and oddly nervous. She wheeled herself to her closet, surveying the rows of designer suits and dresses that comprised her armor against the world. Everything was organized by color and occasion: board meetings, investor presentations, charity galas. Nothing that said spending Saturday at a garage in Queens. After 10 minutes of deliberation, she settled on jeans she hadn't worn since before the accident, and a Columbia University sweatshirt that had somehow survived multiple wardrobe purges. Getting dressed took longer now than it used to. Everything did. The occupational therapist had taught her tricks and techniques, ways to manage buttons and zippers with limited lower body mobility. She'd mastered it all with the same determination she brought to hostile takeovers, but this morning her fingers fumbled with simple tasks. She was nervous. The realization made her laugh. She'd presented to rooms full of billionaire investors without breaking a sweat, but the prospect of seeing Ethan again had her hands shaking like a teenager. Her phone buzzed. Sarah, of course, who apparently never slept. "You never told me about this mystery man. I'm dying here." Was it someone from the restaurant, a waiter, the maitre d'? "Please tell me you didn't leave with some random stranger." Isabella typed back. "Technically, he wasn't random. His sister works for us." The response was immediate. "What? Who? I know everyone in this company." "Jessica Carter, accounting." There was a pause, then Jessica Carter's brother, the mechanic. "Oh my God, Isabella. She's been trying to set him up with everyone in the office for months. She showed me his picture once. He's gorgeous. How did this happen?" Before Isabella could respond, another text came through. "Wait, you're going to see him again. When, where, what are you wearing?" "Sarah, it's Saturday morning. Don't you have a life?" "My boss's love life is my life. especially when she hasn't been on a real date in 2 years. Details, now. Isabella was saved from responding by her doorbell. She checked the time, 9:45. He was early. "Ms. Grant?" Her doorman's voice came through the intercom. "There's an Ethan Carter here to see you. Should I send him up?" "Yes, thank you, Robert." She did a final check in the mirror. The sweatshirt was old but soft. The jeans actually fit, despite 2 years of muscle loss in her legs. She looked normal. Like any other 30-something woman about to spend Saturday with a guy she liked. The wheelchair was just part of the picture, not the whole story. The knock when it came was firm, but not aggressive. She opened the door to find Ethan holding 2 coffee cups and a paper bag that smelled like heaven. "Morning," he said, and his smile was just as magnetic as she remembered. He was wearing jeans and a Henley that had seen better days, and he'd shaved, revealing a strong jawline she hadn't fully appreciated in last night's dim lighting. "I brought provisions. Wasn't sure how you took your coffee, so I got 1 black and 1 with everything. And bagels from this place near my garage that'll ruin you for all other bagels." "Come in, Wu," she said, suddenly self-conscious about her apartment. Last night it had felt too perfect, too empty. Now, with Ethan standing in her foyer, it felt like a museum, all sharp edges and cold surfaces. He whistled low, taking in the space. "This place is incredible. That view." He walked to the windows, drawn like everyone was to the panoramic view of Central Park. "You can see everything from up here." "It's one of the reasons I bought it," she admitted, following him. "After the accident, I needed perspective, I guess. Up here, the city looks manageable, organized, like something that makes sense." He turned from the window to look at her. "And does it make sense? Some days. Other days I feel like I'm watching someone else's life through glass. Hence the trip to Queens," he said, holding out one of the coffees. "Black or diabetes in a cup?" "Black," she said, grateful for the subject change. "Though I'm curious about what constitutes everything in coffee. Sugar, cream, vanilla, caramel, and I think the kid behind the counter threw in some kind of seasonal syrup just for fun." I took 1 sip and could feel my teeth dissolving. They sat at her kitchen island, her perched in her chair, him on one of the bar stools, and ate bagels that were, as promised, transcendent. Sesame for her, everything for him, both with enough cream cheese to constitute a meal on its own. "So," Ethan said, licking cream cheese off his thumb in a way that should not have been as attractive as it was, "before we head to the garage, I should warn you about a few things. First, it's not fancy. It's basically a converted warehouse that hasn't been updated since the 70s. Second, I might have some customers dropping by. Saturdays when people pick up their cars. And third," he paused, looking almost shy, "my team might be there. They're good guys, but they can be a little much." "Your team?" "3 guys who work with me. Tommy's been there since I opened. He's got a mouth on him, but he's the best bodywork guy in the city. Miguel handles electronics, computer systems, all the modern stuff I'm still learning. And Bobby's just Bobby. He's supposed to be retired, but he shows up every day anyway. Makes coffee, tells us we're doing everything wrong." "They sound wonderful," Isabella said, and meant it. "It must be nice working with people you actually like." "You don't like the people you work with." "I respect them, trust them mostly. But like," she considered, "Sarah, my assistant. Maybe my CFO, David, though we're more friendly colleagues than friends. The truth is, it's lonely at the top. Such a cliché, but it's true. Everyone's either trying to impress you or undermine you. Sometimes both simultaneously." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She finished her bagel, wiped her hands. "Which is why I'm looking forward to today. No agenda, no power plays, just Cars and grease and whatever else happens in this garage of yours. About that, Ethan said, standing. We should probably get going. I've got a client coming by at noon to pick up a '65 Corvette, and I want to show you around before it gets crazy. The ride to Queens was different in daylight. Isabella could see the city transforming as they left Manhattan, the buildings shrinking, the spaces expanding. Ethan drove with the windows down despite the November chill, and she found herself relaxing into the bench seat, letting the wind mess up her carefully styled hair. "Tell me about your team," she said, as they crossed the Queensboro Bridge. "How did you find them?" "Tommy found me, actually. I just opened, had no idea what I was doing business-wise. He showed up, said he'd heard I was looking for help, and basically refused to leave until I hired him. Turned out he'd worked with my dad back in the day. Never mentioned it until after I hired him, didn't want me to feel obligated. And Miguel? Kid was stealing cars when I met him. Not joyriding, he was boosting them for parts, selling to chop shops. 19 years old, and could hotwire anything in under 30 seconds. Judge gave him a choice jail or community service. I was his community service, teach him to fix cars legally. That was 7 years ago. Now he's my partner, owns 20% of the business. You gave him equity. He earned it. Kid works harder than anyone I know, and he's brilliant with electronics. Modern cars are basically computers on wheels, and I'm still more comfortable with carburetors than circuit boards. And Bobby? Ethan's expression softened. Bobby was my dad's best friend. Had his own shop for 40 years, sold it when his wife got sick. After she passed, he started showing up at my place. First just to criticize my technique. Then he started making coffee. Then organizing tools. Finally, I just gave him a key and stopped pretending he didn't work there. They pulled up outside a building that looked like it had been forgotten by time and development. The exterior was corrugated metal and faded paint, Carter's classic auto, painted in letters that had probably been bold once but were now more suggestion than statement. But the parking lot was full of beautiful cars, vintage Mustangs, a pristine Thunderbird, what looked like a DeLorean. "This is it," Ethan said, and she could hear the pride and vulnerability in his voice. "My kingdom of rust and restoration." Before he could help her out, the garage's bay door rolled up, and a man emerged who had to be Tommy, stocky, bald, with arms covered in tattoos that looked like they'd been done by different artists over many years. "Boss, this the lady you—" He stopped, seeing Isabella in the wheelchair as Ethan helped her out. His expression went through several rapid changes, surprise, curiosity, then a grin that transformed his rough face. "You're the CEO, Jessica's shown us pictures. She's always going on about her brilliant boss. Never mentioned you were beautiful too." "Tommy," Ethan warned. "What, I'm being complimentary. Hi. I'm Tommy. I'd shake your hand, but—" He held up his hands, which were covered in what looked like engine grease. "Been working on the Corvette's undercarriage." "Isabella," she said, charmed despite herself. "And don't worry about the grease. I'm told I'm getting dirty today anyway." Tommy's eyebrows shot up and he looked at Ethan with undisguised glee. "You're putting her to work." "Oh, this I gotta see. Miguel, Bobby, get out here." 2 more men emerged from the garage. Miguel was younger than Isabella expected, maybe late 20s with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Bobby was exactly as she'd pictured, 70s grizzled, wearing coveralls that had probably been washed sometime in the last decade. "Guys, this is Isabella," Ethan said. "Isabella, the peanut gallery." "The CEO, Isabella?" Miguel asked. "Jessica's boss." "The very same," Isabella confirmed. Bobby studied her with shrewd eyes. "You the one that got stood up at that fancy restaurant last night?" "Bobby!" Ethan exclaimed. What Jessica called this morning, all worried because her brother never came home last night and was supposed to be on some blind date. Put two and two together. He looked at Isabella. Good for you, not letting a perfectly good reservation go to waste. Isabella laughed. It did seem wasteful. Come on, Ethan said, shooting his team a look that promised retribution later. Let me show you around before these idiots scare you off. The garage was larger than it looked from outside, divided into different work areas. One bay for major mechanical work, another for body work, a paint booth that looked professionally maintained despite the building's age. The walls were covered with tools organized with military precision, and photos, dozens of before and after shots of cars Ethan had restored. This is incredible, Isabella said, taking it all in. How long have you been here? 5 years. Took every penny from Dad's life insurance to get started, plus a loan I'm still paying off. First year, I think I restored 3 cars total. Now we're booked solid for the next 6 months. He wheeled her over to a car covered by a tarp. Want to see my current baby? At her nod, he pulled off the cover, revealing a 1967 Mustang Fastback in primer gray. Even unfinished, it was beautiful, sleek lines, aggressive stance, pure American muscle car. She's been here for 8 months, Ethan said, running his hand along the hood with obvious affection. Owner found her in a barn in Vermont, hadn't run in 20 years. We've rebuilt everything, engine, transmission, suspension. Just need to finish the bodywork and paint. What color? Highland green. Same as the one in Bullet. The owner's a movie nut. Isabella could see it, the car gleaming green racing through San Francisco streets. Can I see the engine? Ethan's face lit up. Really? Really? He popped the hood, revealing an engine so clean it could have been in a museum. Every surface gleamed, every wire and hose perfectly placed. It was mechanical art form and function in perfect harmony. This is a 390 big block, Ethan explained, his hands moving as he talked. Original to the car, but we've upgraded some components. Modern alternator, electronic ignition, improved cooling system. The purists hate mixing old and new, but I believe in making these cars drivable, not just displayable. That's smart, Isabella said. What's the point of beauty if it doesn't function? He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, something deeper than their surface differences. Boss, Tommy called from across the garage. Corvette guy's here early. The next hour was controlled chaos. The Corvette's owner, a Wall Street type who kept checking his Rolex, insisted on a detailed explanation of every repair. Miguel handled the electronics demonstration, while Tommy walked through the bodywork. Ethan managed it all with easy authority, translating technical speak for the client, keeping things moving. Isabella watched from the office area, a generous term for a corner with a desk, ancient computer and coffee maker that looked like it might be the original one Bobby had brought. She could see why the business was successful, despite the humble surroundings. Ethan and his team weren't just fixing cars. They were preserving history, bringing dreams back to life. You're good with him, she said when the client finally left, clutching his keys like a kid with a new toy. He's actually one of our easier ones, Ethan said, pouring himself coffee from Bobby's pot, then making a face. Jesus, Bobby, this could strip paint. It'll put hair on your chest, Bobby called from under a Camaro. I've got plenty already, thanks. He turned to Isabella. You ready to get those hands dirty? What did you have in mind? Well, the Mustang needs her wheels put back on. Nothing too complex, but it'll give you a feel for the work. Unless you'd rather just watch. Ethan, she interrupted. I run board meetings with hostile investors. I think I can handle lug nuts. Tommy laughed from across the garage. Oh, I like her boss. She's got spine. What followed was the strangest, most enjoyable tutorial Isabella had ever received. Ethan showed her how to position the wheels, how to hand-tighten the lug nuts in a star pattern before using the pneumatic wrench. The work was physical in a way her life hadn't been since the accident. Her arms burned from lifting, her hands got dirty despite the gloves Ethan offered, and she loved every minute of it. "You're a natural," Miguel said, watching her work. "Most people cross-thread at least one lug nut their first time." "I'm good at following instructions," Isabella said, then caught Ethan's eye. "When they make sense." "Uh-oh," Tommy said. "Boss has met his match. Someone who won't just nod and smile when he goes on about compression ratios." "I don't go on about compression ratios," Ethan protested. "Last week you gave a 20-minute lecture on the difference between 9/1 and 10/1, Bobby said without looking up from his work. "That was educational. That was torture," Tommy countered. "But entertaining torture watching that fashion blogger's eyes glaze over." "Fashion blogger?" Isabella asked. Ethan flushed slightly. "Another one of Jessica's setups. She lasted about an hour before she got an emergency call." "Her loss," Isabella said, tightening the last lug nut with perhaps more force than necessary. They worked until the light started fading, the autumn sun painting golden stripes across the concrete floor. Isabella learned about spark plugs and timing belts, the difference between disc and drum brakes, why carburetors were superior to fuel injection, according to Bobby, and why that was complete nonsense, according to Miguel. Her hands were filthy. Her sweatshirt had a grease stain she'd never get out, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so accomplished. "You did good today," Ethan said as they cleaned up. He was washing his hands at the industrial sink, and Isabella found herself mesmerized by the way the water ran over his forearms, the definition of muscles earned through work, not gym memberships. "I had a good teacher." "Nah, you've got instincts. The way you figured out that wheel balance issue, Tommy's been training guys for 20 years who couldn't spot that. It was just logic. The vibration pattern suggested, see instincts." He dried his hands, then surprised her by taking hers, gently cleaning the grease from under her nails with a rag and degreaser. "Most people don't think about cars logically. They're either intimidated or romantic about them. You see them for what they are, complicated machines that follow rules. Is that good or bad?" "It's perfect," he said, and something in his voice made her look up. He was closer than he'd been all day, and she could smell oil and soap and something uniquely him. "Ethan." "Boss." Tommy's voice shattered the moment. "We're heading to Rosie's. You two coming?" Ethan stepped back, and Isabella felt the loss of his proximity like a physical thing. "Rosie's is our Saturday tradition," he explained. "Bar down the street. Nothing fancy but good beer and the best wings in Queens. You interested?" She looked down at herself, stained sweatshirt, greasy jeans, hair that had given up any pretense of style. 3 years ago, she wouldn't have been caught dead looking like this in public. But 3 years ago, she could walk. "I'm interested," she said. Rosie's was exactly what she expected: dim lighting, sticky floors, a jukebox that looked older than Bobby, and a bartender who greeted Ethan's crew like family. What she didn't expect was how easily she fit into their dynamic. Tommy told outrageous stories about his dating disasters, Miguel argued with Bobby about baseball statistics, and Ethan played referee while stealing food from everyone's plates. "So, Isabella," Tommy said after his third beer, "what's a CEO doing slumming with grease monkeys?" "Tommy," Ethan warned. "It's okay," Isabella said. "Fair question. Honestly, today's the first time in 2 years I've felt useful. Actually useful, not just ornamental." "Ornamental?" Miguel asked. She searched for the right words. After the accident, everyone treated me like glass. Even at work, people are careful around me. They don't argue as hard, don't push back on my ideas. It's like they think the wheelchair makes me fragile. That's bullshit, Bobby said bluntly. Saw you working today. Nothing fragile about you. Plus, Tommy added, you put up with the boss's compression ratio lecture. That takes strength. I didn't lecture, Ethan protested. You absolutely lectured, Isabella said. But it was an interesting lecture. Et tu, Isabella? She grinned, stealing a wing from his plate. Just calling it like I see it. The bar was filling up, a mix of mechanics from other shops. Construction workers, locals who'd probably been coming here since it opened. Classic rock played from the jukebox, and everything smelled like beer and fried food. It was about as far from her usual Saturday night as possible, and Isabella loved it. Dance with me, Ethan said suddenly. The table went quiet. Isabella felt her chest tighten. I can't. Sure you can. Maybe not the way you used to, but that doesn't mean you can't. He stood holding out his hand. Trust me. She looked at his hand, then at his face. There was no pity there, no inspiration porn motivation. Just a guy asking a girl to dance. Okay, she said. He wheeled her to a corner of the bar, where a few couples were swaying to Stand By Me. Then, in a move that shouldn't have worked, but he knelt beside her chair, one hand taking hers, the other resting lightly on the armrest. We'll make our own rules, he said quietly, and began to move. It wasn't dancing like she'd known before. There were no grand sweeps or complicated steps. But moving with him, her chair becoming part of their rhythm, she felt something she hadn't felt since the accident, graceful. He spun her chair gently, moved with her, created a dance that was theirs alone. People are staring, she murmured. Let them, he said. They're just jealous they don't have the most beautiful woman in Queens as their partner. Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Carter. I'm counting on it, Ms. Grant. The song ended. Another began something faster, more challenging. But Ethan adapted, making her chair part of the dance rather than an obstacle to it. By the third song, other couples had made space for them, and Isabella was laughing, breathless from joy rather than exertion. Where did you learn to do this, she asked when they finally returned to the table. My mom was in a chair the last year of her life, he said quietly. Cancer. She loved to dance, spent her whole life dancing. When she couldn't walk anymore, Dad figured out ways to keep dancing with her. Taught me that movement is movement, doesn't matter how it happens. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. That's beautiful. That's love, Bobby said gruffly. Real love finds a way. Tommy raised his beer. To finding a way. They all drank, and Isabella felt something shift inside her chest. These people, this place, this moment, it was real in a way her life hadn't been for so long. No one here cared about her company's stock price or her rehabilitation timeline. They just cared that she could identify a bad wheel balance and was willing to get her hands dirty. It was nearly midnight when Ethan drove her home. The city was alive with Saturday night energy, but in the truck's cab they existed in their own quiet bubble. Thank you, she said, as they pulled up to her building. For today. For everything. Thank you for coming. The guys loved you. Bobby actually smiled, which might be a sign of the apocalypse. They're wonderful. Your whole world is wonderful. It's not much compared to... He gestured at her building. Ethan, stop. She turned to face him fully. Stop comparing. My world is glass and steel and stock options. Yours is honest work and real friendship and things that last. Don't diminish that. He was quiet for a moment. Then, can I see you again? You'd better. I need to see that Mustang when it's painted. That'll be weeks from now. Then I guess you'll have to find other excuses to see me. He grinned. I've got a garage full of cars that need work. Could take years to show you everything. I've got time, she said, and meant it. This time when he helped her from the truck, his hands lingered a moment longer than necessary. And when she was settled in her chair, he didn't step back immediately. Isabella, he said softly. Yes. Instead of answering, he leaned down and kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. Good night. She watched him drive away, the truck's taillights disappearing into the river of New York traffic. Her doorman was studiously not watching, though she caught his smile as she passed. Back in her apartment, she ignored the 17 texts from Sarah and 3 missed calls from her CFO. Instead, she wheeled herself to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Ethan was driving home to his place in Queens. Tomorrow he'd be back at the garage bringing dead engines back to life. And Monday, she'd be back in her office running meetings and making decisions that affected thousands of people. But something had changed. The line between her two worlds had blurred. She could still smell motor oil on her hands, still feel the satisfaction of properly torqued lug nuts, still hear Tommy's laughter and Bobby's gruff wisdom. And Ethan was becoming something she hadn't planned for, hadn't put in any strategic forecast. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Miguel. Got your number from Jessica, sorry. Just wanted to say it was cool having you at the garage today. Also, Ethan hasn't shut up about you since you left. It's actually kind of annoying, but also nice seeing him happy. Anyway, welcome to the crew. Isabella smiled, saving the number. Then another text from Tommy. Yo, CEO lady, you've got decent hands for a rookie. Come back next week and I'll teach you bodywork. Fair warning, it's harder than mechanical, but way more satisfying. Also, the boss is totally gone on you. It's hilarious. She laughed out loud, alone in her perfect apartment that suddenly didn't feel so empty. A third text arrived, this one from a number she recognized as Ethan's home safe, already planning tomorrow's excuse to see you. Current frontrunner teaching you to change oil. Very romantic, lots of opportunities for meaningful looks while discussing viscosity. Thoughts? She typed back, only if you promise more compression ratio lectures. I live for those. Woman after my own heart. Good night, Isabella. Good night, Ethan. Isabella sat by the window for a long time, watching the city sleep and wake in its endless cycle. 2 days ago, she'd been a CEO with a disability defined by her success and her limitations in equal measure. Tonight, she was Isabella, someone who could rebuild an engine dance in a dive bar and make a mechanic from Brooklyn look at her like she was magic. The accident had taken her legs, her dance career, her sense of herself as whole. But maybe, just maybe, it had also led her here to a place where broken things got fixed, where different could be beautiful, where a disaster of a blind date could become the beginning of something worth rebuilding for. Tomorrow she would see him again, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because Ethan was right, there were a lot of cars in that garage, a lot of things to learn, a lot of dances to reimagine. And Isabella Grant, CEO, paralyzed woman, unexpected grease monkey, was ready for all of it. The following weeks fell into a rhythm that Isabella hadn't expected, but quickly came to cherish. Mondays through Fridays belonged to Grant Innovations board meetings, acquisitions, the endless dance of corporate leadership. But weekends belonged to Queens, to the garage, to Ethan. She'd arrive Saturday mornings with coffee and pastries from different bakeries she discovered during the week, and they'd spend the day working on whatever car needed attention. It was during the third weekend, as she helped Miguel rewire a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda's dashboard that things began to shift between them in ways that felt both inevitable and terrifying. "You're getting good at this," Miguel said, watching her strip wires with practiced efficiency. "Maybe too good. Going to put me out of a job." "Please," Isabella laughed. "It would take me years to learn what you know about electrical systems." "Maybe, but you've got the patience for it. That's rare." He glanced across the garage where Ethan was deep in discussion with a customer. "He's different, you know, since you started coming around." "Different how?" "Lighter. Like he remembered there's life outside this garage." Miguel connected 2 wires, tested the connection. "After his dad died, he kind of disappeared into the work. We'd practically have to force him to leave some nights. But now he actually takes breaks, makes plans. Last Tuesday, he left at 6. Tommy nearly had a heart attack." Isabella followed Miguel's gaze to where Ethan stood, gesturing animatedly as he explained something about camshafts. The afternoon light streaming through the garage's dirty windows caught the angles of his face, the strength in his shoulders. She'd memorized these details over the past weeks, the way he absently rubbed his jaw when thinking, how his eyes crinkled when he really smiled, the particular tilt of his head when he was listening intently. "You're good for him too," Miguel added quietly. "Just so you know." Before she could respond, Ethan was walking over, wiping his hands on a rag that only seemed to spread the grease around. "How's the rewiring going? Your girlfriend's a natural," Miguel said, then immediately busied himself with suddenly urgent work under the dashboard. The word hung in the air between them. Girlfriend. They hadn't defined what this was these weekends, these stolen moments, these looks that lasted too long. Ethan's ears turned slightly red, but he didn't correct Miguel. "Actually," he said, "that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. Not the girlfriend thing, I mean, unless you want to talk about that, but I mean..." He stopped, took a breath. "I'm making this weird." "A little," Isabella agreed, fighting a smile. "Let me start over. It's my birthday next weekend." "It is..." She straightened, nearly hitting her head on the Barracuda's mirror. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's not a big deal. But Jessica's insisting on dinner and she wants to meet you properly. Not as her boss, but as whatever we are." He rubbed his jaw in that nervous gesture she'd come to recognize. "Would you come? Fair warning, she's invited what seems like half of Queens. It'll be loud and chaotic and nothing like..." "Yes," Isabella interrupted. Yes. But I need to know how old you're turning so I can properly mock you about it." 34, he admitted. "Oh good, you're older than me. I was worried I was becoming a cougar." Tommy's laughter echoed from across the garage. "Cougar boss," she called herself a cougar. "Tommy's been eavesdropping," Isabella observed. "Tommy's always eavesdropping," Ethan confirmed. "So you'll come even though my family's insane and the restaurant won't be fancy and..." "Ethan." She reached out, caught his still greasy hand. "Stop. I'll be there." His smile was brilliant, transforming his whole face. Yeah. He squeezed her hand, and she felt that increasingly familiar flutter in her chest. 3 weeks of weekends, and every touch still felt electric. They'd kissed exactly twice both times, chaste, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking whatever delicate thing was building between them. But the wanting was there, humming under every interaction, every casual brush of hands, every moment their eyes met across the garage. "Get a room," Bobby called out. "Some of us are trying to work here." Ethan threw his rag at Bobby, who dodged with surprising agility for a man his age. "Back to work, all of you." But he was smiling as he said it, and his thumb brushed over Isabella's knuckles before he let go of her hand. The week leading up to his birthday passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Isabella found herself distracted during board presentations thinking about carburetors instead of quarterly projections. Sarah noticed, of course. "You're glowing," she announced, entering Isabella's office Wednesday afternoon with a stack of contracts to review. "It's almost disturbing, like seeing a vampire in sunlight." "Thanks for that image," Isabella said dryly. "And I'm not glowing." "You absolutely are. You've been humming all morning. Humming, I've worked for you for 3 years through acquisitions and hostile takeovers and that nightmare with the Tokyo expansion, and I've never heard you hum." Isabella realized she had been humming the song she and Ethan had first danced to at Rosie's. "It's nothing." "It's the mechanic," Sarah said triumphantly. "You're still seeing him." "His name is Ethan, and yes." Isabella signed the contracts without really seeing them, trusting Sarah's judgment. "I'm meeting his family this weekend." Sarah actually squealed. "Meeting the family, Isabella, that's huge." "What are you wearing?" "I have no idea," Isabella admitted. "It's at a restaurant in Queens. His sister organized it. There will apparently be, quote, a shit ton of people there." "You're nervous," Sarah observed with wonder. "You negotiated that merger with Yamamoto Industries without blinking, but you're nervous about a birthday dinner." "The Yamamoto merger didn't matter," Isabella said quietly. Sarah's expression softened. "And this does." "Yeah, this does." "Then we need to plan. Outfit, gift, everything. Leave it to me." "Sarah, I don't need—" "You're meeting his family, his sister who works here who's probably been talking about you. You need to look perfect but not trying too hard, expensive but not showy, sexy, but family appropriate. You're giving me a headache. That's why you pay me the big bucks. Now tell me everything about this restaurant so I can research the appropriate outfit." Saturday arrived gray and threatening rain, the kind of November day that made Isabella's legs ache more than usual. The phantom pain was something doctors had warned her about, but couldn't really explain, nerves firing signals about limbs that couldn't feel anymore. She took her medication, did her stretches, and tried not to let the frustration settle in. She'd eventually settled on a casual dress in deep green that brought out her eyes, paired with a leather jacket that said, "Not trying too hard," while actually being very carefully chosen. The gift had been harder, what to get a man who found joy in simplicity. Finally, she'd commissioned something from a metalworker who specialized in automotive art, a sculpture made from actual Mustang parts, abstract but recognizable to anyone who knew cars. Ethan picked her up at 6, and she could tell he was nervous by the way he kept adjusting the radio volume. "You okay?" she asked as they drove through increasingly familiar Queens streets. "My family can be intense," he said. "Jessica means well, but she has no boundaries. Our cousins are loud. My Uncle Tony will definitely say something inappropriate. My Aunt Marie will try to feed you until you explode. Ethan, I run a tech company. I deal with inappropriate comments and boundary issues daily. Yeah, but those people aren't my family. You can't fire my Uncle Tony for asking invasive questions about your personal life. Want to bet?" He laughed, some tension leaving his shoulders. "Fair point. You probably could make Uncle Tony cry if you wanted." "I would never make your uncle cry. At his age it would be cruel." "Uncle Tony's 43. Then he's fair game." They pulled up outside a restaurant that looked like it had been transplanted from a small Italian village, stone facade, window boxes with dying herbs, a hand-painted sign reading, "Fortunato's Family Restaurant." The windows were steamed with warmth and filled with people. "Ready?" Ethan asked. "No," Isabella admitted. "But let's do it anyway." Getting into Fortunato's required navigating a narrow doorway and a step that someone had attempted to make accessible with a makeshift ramp that had definitely not been there before tonight. Isabella recognized Jessica's handiwork in the carefully placed non-slip tape and the way the hostess immediately directed them to a table that had clearly been chosen for wheelchair accessibility. The back room exploded with shouts of, "Surprise!" Though since Ethan had known about the party, he did an admirable job of looking shocked. Isabella counted at least 30 people, all talking at once, all turning to look at her with undisguised curiosity. Jessica materialized from the crowd, looking nothing like the composed accounting manager Isabella knew from work. Her hair was loose, her smile bright with nervous energy, and she immediately pulled Ethan into a hug that looked more like a wrestling move. "Happy birthday, you old bastard," she said, then turned to Isabella. "Hi, I mean Ms. Grant. I mean shit, what do I call you?" "Isabella," she said warmly. "We're not at work, Jessica." "Thank God, because I've had 3 glasses of wine already and was worried about protocol." Jessica's nervousness was endearing. "I'm so glad you came. Ethan hasn't shut up about you for weeks. It's actually nauseating, but also sweet." "Jess," Ethan warned. "What? She should know you're completely gone on her. Level the playing field since she probably has way more game than you." "I'm beginning to remember why I don't come to family events," Ethan muttered. The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions. Uncle Tony, who did indeed ask inappropriate questions about how everything worked with the wheelchair until his wife smacked him. Aunt Marie, who immediately declared Isabella too thin and began forcing plates of food on her cousins, with names Isabella couldn't keep straight. Family friends who'd known Ethan since he was this high. Through it all, Ethan stayed close, his hand finding hers under the table, translating family jokes, creating a bubble of calm in the chaos. Isabella watched him with his family, the easy affection, the good-natured ribbing, the way he helped his elderly grandmother to her seat, how he remembered everyone's drinks, their kids' names, their problems and successes. "He's the glue," Jessica said, sliding into the seat beside Isabella, while Ethan was getting another round from the bar. "Always has been. After Mom died when Dad was falling apart, Ethan held everything together. He was 15 and he was making sure I did my homework, packing lunches, going to parent-teacher conferences. Then Dad got sick, and Ethan did it all over again. That must have been hard on both of you. Harder on him. I got to be the baby, got to fall apart. Ethan never did. Just worked school, the garage, with Dad taking care of everyone." Jessica watched her brother laughing with their cousins. "I've been trying to set him up for years, because I wanted him to have someone who takes care of him for once. Every woman I introduced him to wanted to change him, fix him, upgrade him. But you don't do you." "Why would I?" Isabella asked. "He's already perfect." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Oh shit, you really mean that? You're in love with him." The words hit Isabella like a physical blow. Love. Was that what this was, this constant awareness of him, this need to share every thought, this feeling of home when he smiled at her? She started. But Ethan returned with drinks and the moment passed. Dinner was Italian-American chaos, too much food, overlapping conversations, arguments about politics and sports that seemed to be the same discussion. Isabella found herself drawn into a debate about the Mets' chances next season with Uncle Tony, who'd apparently forgiven her for threatening to make him cry. "You know baseball?" he asked, impressed. "My father had season tickets to the Yankees. I was raised on baseball statistics and disappointment." "Yankees fan, and you're dating my nephew Ethan. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking she's brilliant and beautiful, and I can overlook her terrible taste in teams," Ethan said, appearing with yet another plate Aunt Marie had insisted Isabella needed. The casual way he said it, brilliant and beautiful, like it was just fact, made her chest tighten. After dinner, the older relatives settled into coffee and gossip, while the younger ones gravitated toward the small dance floor, where someone had set up speakers playing a mix of classic rock and Italian favorites. Isabella watched from the table as Ethan was dragged into dancing with his grandmother, who barely came up to his chest, but led with the authority of someone who'd been dancing before he was born. "Go," Jessica said. "Dance with him." "I can't really..." "Bullshit. I saw the video Tommy posted of you two at Rosie's. You can dance." There was a video. Isabella made a mental note to check Tommy's social media later. But Jessica was already waving Ethan over, and his grandmother was pushing him toward Isabella with surprising strength for someone her size. "Nonna says I have to dance with my girl," Ethan said, offering his hand. "And you don't argue with Nonna." "We wouldn't want to upset Nonna," Isabella agreed, taking his hand. This time he didn't kneel. Instead, he stood beside her chair, one hand in hers, the other resting lightly on her shoulder. They moved together, finding their rhythm while his family watched. It should have been awkward, all those eyes, the wheelchair, the small space, but Ethan made it feel natural, like they'd been dancing together for years. "Your family's wonderful," she said, as they swayed to something slow and Italian she didn't recognize. "They're a lot." "They love you. That's beautiful to see." He spun her chair gently, bringing her back to face him. "They already love you too. Nonna pulled me aside to tell me that if I mess this up, she's keeping you and disowning me." "Smart woman. The smartest." His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her cheek thumb, brushing her jaw. "Isabella. Yeah, I want to kiss you. Really kiss you. But not here. Not with Uncle Tony taking pictures and my cousins making inappropriate comments." Her heart was racing. "Then where..." "Trust me." She'd follow him anywhere she realized. This man who'd appeared in her life because of a missed connection, who saw her chair as incidental rather than defining, who made her feel whole in ways that had nothing to do with walking. "Always," she said. They stayed another hour until the cake was cut, homemade by Aunt Marie, who watched Isabella eat every bite, and presents opened. The Mustang sculpture was a hit, with every mechanic in the room examining it with reverent hands. Then Ethan made their excuses, weathering the good-natured teasing about leaving his own party early. "Where are we going?" Isabella asked as he helped her into the truck. "Somewhere I want to show you. Somewhere special." They drove toward the water, the city lights reflecting off the East River. He pulled into a marina she didn't know existed, mostly industrial ships and working boats rather than pleasure craft. At the end of a pier sat a small building that looked abandoned except for the warm light glowing from one window. "What is this place?" "Dad's office. He did marine repairs on the side, mostly for extra cash when the garage was slow. I've been paying the lease since he died, couldn't bear to clean it out." He helped her out of the truck, navigating the uneven pier carefully. "I come here when I need to think. Never brought anyone else here." The office was tiny, a desk buried under old invoices, walls covered with pictures of boats and cars, a couch that had seen better decades. But the window looked out over the river, and the city lights turned the water into liquid silver. "It's perfect," Isabella said. "Really, really." Ethan moved to stand beside her chair, looking out at the view. "After Dad died, I'd come here and try to figure out how to keep everything going. The garage, the house, Jessica's college tuition. I'd sit here for hours, making lists, running numbers, trying to be the man he'd taught me to be. You were so young to carry all that." 29 felt ancient at the time. "But yeah, looking back," he shrugged. "You do what you have to do, like you did after your accident." "That was different." "Was it?" "You rebuilt your entire life. Found new ways to do everything. That takes courage I can't even imagine. Or stubbornness. That too." He turned to face her fully. Isabella, I need to tell you something. Her heart stuttered. This was it, the moment he realized she was too complicated, too different, too much work. I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. I know it's fast, and I know your life is complicated, and I know we're from different worlds. But every morning I wake up thinking about you, and every night I fall asleep replaying our conversations. When something good happens at the garage, you're the first person I want to tell. When something goes wrong, I want to hear your voice telling me it'll work out. Isabella felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Ethan, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Because you've changed everything for me. Made me remember there's life beyond work and obligation. Made me want things I'd stopped letting myself want. Can I talk now? She asked, laughing through her tears. Sorry, yes. Talk. I love you too, you idiot. The words hung between them for a moment, huge and terrifying and perfect. Then Ethan was kissing her, really kissing her, not the careful pecks of the past weeks, but something deep and desperate and full of promise. His hands tangled in her hair, and she pulled him closer. Pouring everything she couldn't say into the kiss, the loneliness of the past 2 years, the joy of finding him, the terror and wonder of loving someone again. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. So what now? He asked. Now we figure it out, Isabella said. Together. I can work with that. They stayed in the little office for hours, talking and kissing and planning. Ethan pulled her onto the ancient couch, her legs across his lap, his arms around her. They talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, dreams they'd abandoned, dreams they still harbored. Isabella told him about the dancing she'd given up, and he told her about the engineering degree he'd started but never finished. You could go back, she said, playing with his fingers. Finish your degree. When the garage takes all my time. What if it didn't have to? He looked at her warily. What are you thinking? Grant Innovations has been looking to expand into automotive tech. Electric vehicles specifically. Classic cars converted to electric engines. That's sacrilege. That's the future. And you could be part of it. Consult for us, bring your expertise. It would free up capital for the garage, maybe let you hire more people, take time for school. Isabella, I don't want your money. It's not charity. It's business. You have knowledge we need. We have resources you could use. Partnership, not pity. He was quiet for a long moment, considering. Tommy would have opinions about electric conversions. Tommy has opinions about everything. True. He kissed her temple. Can I think about it? Of course. And Isabella, whatever happens with business stuff, it doesn't change this. Us, that's separate. Completely separate. She agreed, then ruined the seriousness by yawning hugely. I should get you home. I don't want to go home. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ethan went very still. Isabella, I know we've been taking things slow, and I know it's complicated with my situation. But Ethan, I want you, all of you, and I want you to have all of me. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The drive to her apartment was charged with anticipation. Ethan's hand found hers at every red light, his thumb drawing circles on her palm that made her shiver. By the time they reached her building, Isabella felt like she might combust from wanting. Getting upstairs into her apartment felt like it took forever. But then they were finally alone, no family or garage crew or city between them. Just Ethan and Isabella, and the promise of something more. I need to tell you some things, Isabella said, about how this works now, what I can feel, what I can't. Tell me everything, Ethan said. I want to know everything about you. So she did, explained the medical realities with clinical detachment that helped her manage the vulnerability of it. Ethan listened without flinching, asking questions that were practical rather than prurient, making her feel heard rather than examined. The thing is, she finished, I don't actually know how it'll be. I haven't, not since the accident. Then we'll figure it out together, he said simply, like everything else. What followed was nothing like before the accident, but it was theirs. Ethan was patient and creative and attentive in ways that made Isabella feel cherished rather than challenged. He mapped every inch of skin that still held sensation, found ways to make her gasp and arch that had nothing to do with her legs and everything to do with connection. I love you, he whispered against her throat, her shoulder, her palm. Every part of you. She believed him. For the first time since the accident, she believed she was worthy of being loved completely. Wheelchair and paralysis and complications included. Afterward, they lay tangled together in her bed, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. Ethan traced lazy circles on her back while she listened to his heartbeat gradually slow. Stay, she said. Tonight, tomorrow, as long as you want. Careful, he murmured into her hair. I might never leave. I might never let you. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the disaster of her blind date 3 weeks ago, now feeling like destiny. Outside New York hummed with its endless energy, but inside Isabella's apartment, everything was quiet and perfect, and exactly as it should be. Tomorrow would bring questions from Jessica, from the garage crew, from Sarah, from everyone who'd watched them leave the party early. There would be logistics to figure out 2 very different lives to somehow blend. The business proposition would need careful navigation to keep it separate from the personal. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, Ethan's breath was warm against her neck, his arm heavy and perfect across her waist. Tonight, she was just a woman in love with a man who saw her exactly as she was and wanted her anyway. Tonight was theirs. The last thing Isabella remembered before sleep took her was Ethan murmuring, I love you, one more time, like a promise, like a prayer, like the beginning of everything. Morning came softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden stripes across the bedroom. Isabella woke to find Ethan propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression so tender, it made her chest ache. How long have you been awake? She asked, voice rough with sleep. A while. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I wanted to memorize this. Creepy or romantic, I can't decide. Both. He leaned down to kiss her morning breath and all. Definitely both. Her phone erupted with notifications breaking the spell. Sarah, Jessica, Tommy, everyone seemed to know exactly where Ethan had spent the night. Isabella grabbed the phone, scrolling through the messages with increasing amusement. Jessica says, and I quote, "Finally, I was starting to think my brother was broken." She continued reading. Tommy says, "Boss better not be late for the Camaro delivery." Bobby says nothing because Bobby doesn't text, but Miguel sent 17 question marks. Ethan groaned, burying his face in her shoulder. I forgot about the Camaro. Customers coming at noon. What time is it? 10:30. You should go. I should. But he didn't move, just pressed closer. 5 more minutes. 5 turned into 20, then 30, until Ethan's phone rang with Tommy's distinctive ringtone, Born to be Wild. Because of course it was. Boss, I don't care if you're having the best morning of your life, Mr. Peterson will have our heads if his Camaro isn't perfect, and Miguel needs you to check the timing before. I'm coming, Ethan said, putting the phone on speaker. 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Queen's time or real time. Goodbye, Tommy. Tell Isabella we say hi. Ethan hung up, shaking his head. No boundaries, none at all. Getting ready was an exercise in distraction. Ethan kept pulling Isabella back for just one more kiss, until she finally had to threaten him with her shower chair to get him to leave. But when he was finally gone, promising to come back that evening, the apartment felt too quiet, too empty, despite being exactly as it had been for 2 years. She called Sarah. Details, now, all of them, Sarah demanded without preamble. He loves me, Isabella said, and saying it out loud made it real all over again. Obviously, the man looks at you like you hung the moon. But what happened? Jessica's been texting me all morning. Apparently the family loves you, his grandmother wants to adopt you, and you two disappeared very suspiciously early. We went to his father's old office, talked, then came here. And I'm happy, Sarah. Really, genuinely happy. There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice softer than usual. Good. You deserve that. You deserve everything good. Monday morning brought reality crashing back. Isabella had a board meeting about the quarterly reports, 3 investor calls, and a crisis with the Tokyo office that required delicate handling. But throughout it all, her phone sat on her desk with texts from Ethan that made her smile inappropriately during serious discussions. Just explained compression ratios to a customer using your analogy about pressure and potential. He actually understood it. You're a genius. Tommy says you left your good jacket here. He's holding it hostage until you come back. Can't stop thinking about Saturday night, or Sunday morning, or Sunday afternoon in your shower. Jesus, Isabella, how am I supposed to work? David, her CFO, caught her smiling at her phone during a particularly dry presentation about profit margins. All right, who is he? I'm sorry. The guy who's got Isabella Grant, ice queen of the tech world, grinning at her phone like a teenager. Who is he? Someone, she said simply. Someone special, apparently. Good. You need that. We all need you to have that. You're easier to work with when you're happy. I'm always easy to work with. David snorted. Sure. And I'm a natural blonde. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern that felt both surreal and perfectly natural. Isabella would spend her days running a Fortune 500 company, making decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions in revenue. Then she'd drive to Queens. She'd bought a modified Tesla with hand controls, partly for independence, mostly to see Ethan's face when she'd driven up in it the first time, and spend her evenings covered in grease learning about cars and falling deeper in love. The garage crew had accepted her completely. Tommy taught her body work, showing her how to sand out imperfections and apply primer with smooth, even strokes. Miguel walked her through the basics of modern car computers, patient with her endless questions. Bobby brought her coffee exactly how she liked it and told her embarrassing stories about Ethan's teenage years. Kid thought he knew everything about engines at 16, Bobby said one evening watching Isabella and Ethan work together on a fuel injection system. Took apart his dad's Chevelle without permission. Took him 3 days to figure out how to put it back together. 3 days where I didn't sleep, Ethan added, not looking up from the engine. Dad came home from a trip to find me passed out in the garage, covered in oil, the car finally running. Was he mad? Isabella asked. Furious, then proud. Then he made me detail the entire car with a toothbrush. Character building. Bobby nodded approvingly. That's how you learn respect for the machines. But it wasn't all easy integration. There were moments when their worlds collided uncomfortably. Like the charity gala, Isabella had to attend one of those obligations that came with her position. She'd asked Ethan to come, tried to make it sound casual, but she'd seen his discomfort immediately. "I don't own a tux," he'd said. "We can rent one." "Isabella, it's not about the tux. Those people, your world, I don't speak that language. I'll embarrass you." "You could never embarrass me. I wouldn't know which fork to use. Nobody cares about forks." "They do, though. They care about forks and small talk about portfolios and vacation homes in the Hamptons. I care about carburetors and compression ratios and whether the Mets have a shot next season." They'd fought about it, their first real fight. Isabella accused him of being stubborn and inverted snobbish. He accused her of trying to change him, to force him into her world instead of accepting his. They'd gone 2 days without talking, the longest 2 days since that first night at Gino's. Finally, Isabella had shown up at the garage on a Wednesday afternoon, in the middle of her workday, still in her CEO armor of designer suit and perfect makeup. "You're right," she'd said, without preamble, finding him under a Mustang. "I was trying to force you into my world, because I'm scared." He'd rolled out from under the car oil on his cheek, concern replacing the stubborn set of his jaw. "Scared of what?" "That if we can't merge our worlds, we can't make this work. And I need this to work, Ethan. I need you." He'd stood, not caring about his greasy hands, as he cupped her face. "We don't need to merge anything. We just need to make space for each other. You have your CEO things, I have my garage. Sometimes they'll overlap, sometimes they won't. That's okay. So you won't come to the gala. I'll come to the next one. Give me time to prepare, to get comfortable. And you don't have to come to every family dinner or garage party. We'll find our balance." They'd kissed there in the garage, not caring that Tommy was whistling suggestively, or that Miguel was taking pictures, or that Bobby was muttering about public displays of affection. The balance, when they found it, was imperfect, but theirs. Ethan did eventually come to a company event, the holiday party, less formal than a gala. He wore a suit that Isabella hadn't helped him pick. Jessica had taken him shopping, and he charmed everyone by being exactly himself. When the head of development started talking about electric vehicles, Ethan engaged with genuine interest and expertise that had nothing to do with trying to impress, and everything to do with his natural curiosity. "Your boyfriend knows more about practical application than half my engineers," David told Isabella later. "Where did you find him?" "He found me," she said, watching Ethan demonstrate something about torque using cocktail napkins and olive picks. "Best wrong date, right date of my life." Christmas came with complications they hadn't anticipated. Isabella's parents, who lived in Boston, and whom she'd seen exactly twice since the accident, announced they were coming to New York for the holidays. "They want to meet you," Isabella told Ethan, anxiety clear in her voice. They were in her apartment wrapping presents for his family. Or rather, Isabella was wrapping while Ethan made a mess of tape and ribbon. "That's good, right? Meeting the parents is a milestone." "You don't know my parents. They're particular. Old money, old values. Dad built the company from nothing, but he acts like we've had wealth for generations. Mom's from actual old money and never lets anyone forget it. So they're snobs. They're protective. They think everyone's after the family fortune. And since the accident," she paused, carefully creasing wrapping paper, "they treat me like I'm made of glass, like I'm broken." Ethan abandoned his mangled attempt at wrapping to sit beside her. "You're not broken. I know that. You know that. But they see the chair and see tragedy. They'll see you and see a grease monkey who's taking advantage of their vulnerable daughter. Maybe. Then we'll prove them wrong. He kissed her temple. I can be charming when necessary. Ask Jessica, I charmed her into doing my homework all through high school. That's not charming, that's manipulation. Tomato, tomato. The dinner was set for December 23rd at Isabella's parents' preferred restaurant, a place that made Le Bernardin look casual. Isabella spent the day before in meetings, but her mind kept drifting to worst-case scenarios. What if her parents were awful to Ethan? What if he decided she wasn't worth the hassle of navigating her complicated life? What if stop? Sarah said, entering her office with contracts to sign. You're spiraling. I can see it from my desk. They're going to hate him. They might. So what? You love him. That's what matters. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You've let them make you feel broken for 2 years. Don't let them do it to your relationship, too. The night of the dinner, Ethan picked her up in his truck, freshly washed for the occasion. He was wearing the suit from the holiday party, and he'd gotten a haircut that managed to make him look polished without losing that slightly rough edge she loved. You look beautiful, he said, taking in her burgundy dress, the one that made her feel powerful rather than pretty. You clean up pretty well yourself. Tommy's been giving me grief all day. Apparently I look like I'm going to prom. Tommy's jealous because you look better in a suit than he ever will. They drove in comfortable silence until they reached the restaurant. Then Ethan parked and turned to her. Whatever happens in there, nothing changes between us. Your parents could hate me, could spend the entire dinner listing my inadequacies, and I'll still love you. I'll still be here tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. Okay? Isabella felt tears threaten. How do you always know exactly what to say? Practice. I've been rehearsing that speech all day. Tommy helped. His version had more profanity. She laughed, tension breaking. I love you. I love you too. Now let's go charm the pants off your parents. Please don't actually remove their pants. Metaphorically, Isabella. Metaphorically. Her parents were already seated when they arrived, her mother's diamonds catching the light like warning signals. Richard Grant stood as they approached, still commanding at 68, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who dominated every room he entered. Evelyn Grant remained seated perfectly composed, evaluating Ethan with the calculated assessment of someone who'd spent her life judging people's worth. Darling, her mother said, offering a cheek for Isabella to kiss. You look well. Thanks, Mom. Dad, this is Ethan Carter. Ethan offered his hand to her father, his grip firm, meeting Richard's eyes directly. Mr. Grant, it's a pleasure to meet you. Carter, Richard said, the handshake lasting a beat too long, the kind of masculine measurement Isabella had always found ridiculous. You're the mechanic. Not Ethan, not nice to meet you, just a label and subtle dismissal. Isabella felt her jaw clench, but Ethan seemed unruffled. I own a restoration garage, yes. Classic cars, primarily pre-1975. You have a beautiful daughter, Mr. Grant, though I'm sure you know that. It was perfectly played, acknowledging the dismissal without accepting it, redirecting to something Richard couldn't argue with. Isabella's mother raised an eyebrow, possibly in approval, possibly in surprise that the mechanic could form complete sentences. Dinner was a careful dance. Richard interrogated Ethan about his business with the thoroughness of someone conducting a hostile takeover. Evelyn made subtle digs disguised as concern. It must be difficult dating someone so successful. Don't you feel intimidated? But Ethan navigated it all with surprising grace, answering directly without defensiveness, turning questions back on her parents with genuine interest. When Richard mentioned playing golf at Augusta, Ethan asked about his handicap. When Evelyn mentioned their place in the Hamptons, he asked about the architecture, revealing an unexpected knowledge of historical building techniques. "How do you know about Victorian restoration?" Evelyn asked, genuinely curious despite herself. "My grandfather was a carpenter specialized in historical renovations. Spent summers working with him as a kid. There's something satisfying about bringing old things back to their former glory, whether it's a house or a car." "Interesting perspective," Richard said, and Isabella heard the slight thaw in his voice. The real test came when Isabella excused herself to use the restroom, navigating the narrow path between tables, aware of the stairs that always followed the wheelchair. When she returned, she could hear her father's voice before she rounded the corner. "Understand your concern, Mr. Grant, but I don't see Isabella as broken. I see her as the strongest person I know. She runs a major company. She's learning to rebuild engines. She dances in dive bars. The chair is just how she gets around. It doesn't define her any more than my truck defines me." "And if things progress," her mother was asking, "marriage, children, have you thought about the complications? Have you talked to Isabella about what she wants?" Ethan countered. "Because we have. We talk about everything. The complications, the adaptations, the possibilities. We're partners, Mrs. Grant. That means facing whatever comes together." Isabella rolled into view then, and Ethan's face lit up in that way that still made her stomach flutter. Her parents saw it too, the unconscious lean toward her, the softness in his expression, the way his hand immediately found hers. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked quietly. "Perfect," she said, meaning it. The rest of dinner progressed more smoothly. Richard actually laughed at one of Ethan's stories about a particularly difficult restoration. Evelyn asked about Jessica showing interest in Ethan's family dynamics. By the time dessert arrived, the atmosphere had shifted from interrogation to actual conversation. "He's not what I expected," Richard said while Ethan was settling the bill. He'd insisted, despite Richard's protests, saying, "I invited you to dinner, I pay," with a firmness that brooked no argument. "What did you expect?" Isabella asked. "Someone taking advantage," her mother said bluntly. "You're wealthy, vulnerable." "I'm not vulnerable," Isabella interrupted. "I'm paralyzed. There's a difference." "You know what we mean, darling." "I do. And you're wrong. Ethan doesn't want my money. He won't even let me pay for dinner most nights. He doesn't see me as an easy target or a rehabilitation project or any of the things you're worried about. He just sees me." "We see that," Richard said quietly. "The way he looks at you. It reminds me of how I looked at your mother when we were young, before business and society and everything else complicated things." Later in the truck driving home, Isabella told Ethan what she'd overheard. "You defended me to my parents. They needed to hear it. They love you, but they're seeing you through the lens of the accident. Someone needed to remind them you're more than that." "Thank you. Plus," he added with a grin, "I think I actually won your dad over when I knew about the vintage Porsche he drove in college. Car guys always recognize each other." "You researched my father. Jessica may have helped. Did you know there's a whole article about him in Classic Car Monthly from 1987? You're ridiculous. You love it." "I do." New Year's Eve brought another merger of worlds. They spent the early evening at the garage's party. Tommy had strung lights and set up speakers, and what felt like half of Queens showed up with beer and food. Isabella danced with Ethan, with Bobby, even with Tommy, who was surprisingly graceful for someone built like a linebacker. "You're good for him," Tommy said, spinning her chair with practiced ease. "Haven't seen him this happy since before his dad got sick. He's good for me too." "Yeah, but we already knew that. You were wound tighter than a spring when you first showed up. Now you actually laugh. It's disturbing, but in a good way." At 10, they left for the Grant Innovations party, the corporate celebration Isabella couldn't skip. The contrast was stark, from Queen's dive to Manhattan elegance, from beer bottles to champagne flutes, from Tommy's enthusiastic profanity to careful corporate speak. But Ethan adapted, as he always did. He talked cars with the head of engineering, discussed baseball with the legal team, and charmed the board members with his straightforward honesty. Isabella watched him work the room, not in the calculated way she'd learned, but with genuine interest in people and their stories. "Your boyfriend's causing quite a stir." Sarah appeared at her elbow with champagne. "Half the women in accounting are in love with him." "He has that effect." "More importantly, you're happy. Really, truly happy. It shows." "I am." Isabella watched Ethan laugh at something Hava was saying, his whole face animated. "It shouldn't work, should it? We're so different." "Different isn't bad. It's just different. And from where I'm standing, your differences make you both better." At midnight, as the ball dropped and Manhattan erupted in celebration, Ethan found Isabella on the terrace. The city sprawled below them, lights like stars brought to earth. "Happy New Year, Isabella Grant," he said, pulling her close. "Happy New Year, Ethan Carter." They kissed as fireworks exploded over the Hudson, and Isabella thought about the year ahead. There would be challenges, there always were. Her parents would need time to fully accept Ethan. His family would continue to be lovingly overwhelming. Their worlds would clash and merge, and sometimes refuse to fit together. But standing here with Ethan's arms around her and the city celebrating below, Isabella knew they'd figure it out. They'd already overcome missed connections and blind dates gone wrong, wheelchairs and wealth gaps, compression ratios and corporate buyouts. What was a little more complication compared to that? "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, pressing his forehead to hers. "The future. Our future." "Yeah. What does it look like?" "Complicated. Messy. Perfect." "Sounds about right." They stayed on the terrace as the party continued inside, watching the city celebrate. Somewhere out there, in a restaurant that would never be the same, Le Bernardin, where they'd met Marcus Wellington, was probably celebrating with someone appropriate, someone who fit his life perfectly on paper. Isabella felt a moment of gratitude for his cowardice. If he'd shown up that night, she never would have found this man who saw her wheels as wings, who made her feel whole in ways that had nothing to do with walking. "We should go back in," Ethan said eventually. "Your board members probably think I've kidnapped you." "Let them think it. You did kidnap me in a way. Stole me right out of my careful, controlled life. Best theft I ever committed. Though technically you invited me to dinner first." Semantics. They went back inside, back to the party, back to the complicated dance of their intersecting lives. But Isabella carried the moment on the terrace with her, the promise of a future that wasn't about overcoming her disability or bridging their different worlds, but about building something new together. Something that was uniquely, perfectly, impossibly theirs. The party went on until nearly 3 in the morning. By the time they got back to Isabella's apartment, the sun was starting to lighten the eastern sky. They fell into bed, still dressed, too exhausted for anything but sleep. "Love you," Ethan mumbled into her hair. "Love you too," Isabella whispered back. And as sleep took her, she thought about that night 2 months ago, when she'd sat in an empty restaurant, rejected and alone. How that disaster had become this miracle. How a mechanic walking through the wrong door at the right time had changed everything. Life, Isabella was learning, rarely followed the plan. Sometimes the best things came from the worst moments. Sometimes love looked nothing like you expected. And sometimes a blind date disaster was exactly what you needed to finally see clearly. January arrived with a blizzard that shut down the city for 3 days. Isabella watched the snow fall from her apartment windows, while Ethan tinkered with a carburetor he'd brought up from the garage, spreading newspaper across her pristine dining table without asking permission in a way that made her heart swell with domestic comfort. "You're getting grease on my Italian marble," she said, without any real complaint. "You love it," he replied, not looking up from the delicate springs he was adjusting. "Makes your perfect apartment look lived in." He was right. Over the past 2 months, evidence of Ethan had crept into every corner of her space. Work boots by the door, a Mets cap on the coat rack, motor oil-stained rags in her laundry that her housekeeper had given up complaining about. Her apartment no longer looked like a museum. It looked like a home. "Jessica called," Ethan said, finally looking up. "She wants to know if we're coming to Sunday dinner. Do you want to go? Do you?" They'd been doing this dance more frequently, each trying to accommodate the other sometimes, to the point of neither getting what they actually wanted. Isabella had read somewhere that relationships required compromise, but she was beginning to think maybe they required more honesty than compromise. "I want to spend Sunday with you," she said. "Just you. Is that selfish?" His face softened. "No, that's perfect. I'll tell Jess we'll come next week." The truth was, as much as Isabella had come to love Ethan's family, she cherished their alone time more. In the quiet moments when it was just them, she didn't have to be the CEO or the woman in the wheelchair or anything other than Isabella. And Ethan could just be Ethan, not the responsible older brother or the boss or the caretaker he'd been his whole life. "I've been thinking," Ethan said, returning to his carburetor with the focus of a surgeon. "Dangerous. About your offer. The consulting thing with Grant Innovations." Isabella kept her expression neutral, though her heart rate picked up. She'd made the offer months ago and hadn't brought it up since, not wanting to pressure him. "And I want to do it, but on my terms, which are part-time only. The garage stays my priority, and I want to bring Tommy and Miguel in on it. They know as much as I do about different aspects of restoration. Maybe more." "Done." He looked up, surprised. "Just like that?" "Ethan, I didn't make the offer as a favor. We genuinely need the expertise. Having 3 experts instead of 1, that's even better. It won't be weird, me working for you. You wouldn't be working for me. You'd be consulting for the automotive division. Completely different reporting structure." She wheeled closer to him. "But if it feels weird, we stop. Simple as that." He set down his tools and pulled her onto his lap, a move they'd perfected over the months. "How'd I get so lucky? Wrong place, right time," she said, kissing him softly. "Or right place, wrong time, I can never remember." "Best disaster ever," he murmured against her lips. The consulting arrangement started in February, and watching Ethan navigate the corporate world on his own terms was fascinating. He showed up to the first meeting in jeans and a button-down, ignored the dress code memo Sarah helpfully provided, and proceeded to completely restructure their entire approach to electric vehicle conversion using a whiteboard and brutal honesty. "You're trying to make electric cars look like gas cars," he told the engineering team. "That's backwards. Make them their own thing. Celebrate the difference instead of hiding it." Within a month, the automotive division had a new direction that had investors buzzing with interest. Tommy and Miguel joined the team as consultants too, and their Thursday meetings became Isabella's favorite part of the corporate week, watching her worlds collide productively, beautifully. But success brought its own complications. A profile in the Times about Grant Innovations' new direction included a paragraph about Isabella and Ethan's relationship, complete with a photo from the holiday party. Suddenly, their private story was public consumption. The unlikely romance between the paralyzed CEO and the Brooklyn mechanic, Ethan read from his phone, disgust clear in his voice. They make us sound like a Hallmark movie. We kind of are, Isabella pointed out. They were in bed on a Saturday morning, rain pattering against the windows. Disabled woman finds love with working class hero, very made for TV. You're not a trope, Ethan said fiercely. We're not a story. We're just us. But the article had opened floodgates. Interview requests, social media scrutiny, think pieces about love across class lines that made them both cringe. Isabella was used to public attention, but Ethan found it invasive and uncomfortable. Someone took a picture of me buying coffee this morning, he told her one evening, showing her an Instagram post. The comments are about whether I'm good enough for you. Half think I'm a gold digger, half think I'm a saint for taking on your disability. Ignore them. Easy for you to say. You grew up with this. No, Isabella said firmly. I grew up with money. The scrutiny about our relationship, the wheelchair commentary, this is new for me too. They weathered it together, creating rules about what they'd share publicly, nothing, and how they'd handle intrusive questions politely, but firmly declining to comment. But the pressure took its toll. Ethan became more protective, more prone to anger, when people stared at Isabella's chair or made assumptions about their relationship. Isabella found herself second-guessing public appearances, wondering if she was subjecting Ethan to more than he'd signed up for. The breaking point came at a charity auction in March. Isabella was obligated to attend as a major donor, and Ethan had agreed to come despite his discomfort with such events. They'd been doing well, Ethan chatting with some of the less pretentious guests, Isabella successfully bidding on a week in Tuscany she planned to surprise him with when they overheard a conversation not meant for their ears. I give it 6 months, a woman Isabella recognized as a board member's wife was saying. The novelty will wear off. She'll realize she needs someone more appropriate, or he'll get tired of the complications. The wheelchair alone, her companion agreed. Can you imagine, and the class difference? What would they even talk about? She's always been too proud to accept help. This is just another way of proving she doesn't need anyone. But when reality sets in, Isabella felt Ethan tense beside her. She grabbed his hand before he could confront them, but the damage was done. He was silent the rest of the evening, mechanical in his responses, clearly desperate to leave. In the car afterward, he exploded. How do you stand it? People talking about you like you're not even human, like you're some problem to be solved, or inspiration porn, or… Pull over, Isabella said quietly. What? Pull over, Ethan? He did, finding a spot overlooking the Hudson. The city lights reflected on the water, beautiful and distant. For a moment neither spoke. You want to break up? Isabella said. It wasn't a question. What? No, Jesus, Isabella, no. I'm angry for you, not at you. But this is my life. The scrutiny, the judgment, the people who think they know better. It's always been this way, even before the chair. And now you're subject to it too because of me. Ethan turned to face her fully. You think I care what those vapid people think? I think you care more than you want to admit. And I think it's wearing on you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then you're right. It is wearing on me, but not in the way you think. Then how? I grew up fixing things. If something's broken, I repair it. If someone's hurt, I help. But I can't fix this. I can't make people see you the way I do. I can't repair their prejudice or their small-mindedness. And the impotence of that, the rage of watching people diminish you and not being able to do anything about it, that's what's killing me. Isabella felt tears slide down her cheeks. You can't protect me from the world, Ethan. I know, but I want to, God, I want to wrap you up and keep you safe from all of it. That's not what I need. I know that too. He reached over, wiping her tears with his thumb. What do you need? Just you. Not trying to fix anything or protect me from anything. Just you being here, being mine. I can do that. I want to do that. But Isabella, you have to let me be angry sometimes. Not at you, but at the situation, at the unfairness of it all. Okay. And you have to stop trying to shield me from your world. I chose this. I chose you. All of it, complications included. They sat in silence for a while, watching the river flow past. Finally, Ethan spoke again. Those people at the party, they don't matter. Their opinions, their predictions, their judgment. None of it matters. You know what matters. What? Tomorrow's Saturday. We're going to the garage. Tommy's teaching you paintwork. You're going to get covered in primer and complain about the smell and love every minute of it. Then we'll go to Rosie's, where everyone knows us and nobody cares about class differences or wheelchairs or any of it. And Sunday we'll sleep in, and I'll make you breakfast, and we'll fight about what to watch on Netflix. You always want to watch documentaries about cars. And you always want to watch British murder mysteries where everyone has secrets and drinks tea. Tea is sophisticated. Tea is leaf water. Isabella laughed, the tension finally breaking. I love you. I love you too, even though you have terrible taste in television. They drove home slowly, Ethan's hand in hers, across the center console. The city rushed past, outside millions of lives intersecting and diverging, but inside the car was their own small universe where things made sense. April brought unexpected news. Isabella had been feeling off for weeks, more tired than usual, emotional, in ways that felt unfamiliar. She attributed it to stress until Sarah practically forced her to see a doctor. You look like death, Sarah had said bluntly. And you cried during a commercial yesterday, a commercial for paper towels. The doctor ran tests ruling out various concerns related to her paralysis, checking hormone levels and vitamin deficiencies. When the results came back, Isabella stared at them in shock. Pregnant. That's not possible, she told Dr. Martinez. You said after the accident with the paralysis, the chances were extremely low, but not impossible, Dr. Martinez said gently. The pregnancy will be high risk. We'll need to monitor, closely adjust medications, prepare for potential complications. But Isabella, this is possible, if you want it. If she wanted it. A baby. Ethan's baby. The idea was terrifying and wonderful and completely unexpected. She drove to the garage in a daze, finding Ethan elbow-deep in an engine, Miguel and Tommy arguing about something sports-related nearby. This was their Saturday routine, comfortable and predictable, and she was about to shatter it. Can we talk? She said quietly. Ethan looked up, immediately concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Maybe. I don't know. Can we just go? Tommy said, making shooing motions. We got this. Ethan washed his hands quickly, and they went to his father's old office, their private space, when the garage got too busy. Isabella's heart was pounding so hard, she was sure he could hear it. Isabella, you're scaring me. What's going on? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan's expression went through several changes: shock, confusion, wonder, fear, before settling on something Isabella couldn't quite read. Pregnant, he repeated. But you said the doctors said. I know what they said, but apparently my body didn't get the memo. She was crying now, overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can do this, if we can do this. The risks, the complications. Hey, hey. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. Breathe. Just breathe. Are you upset? Upset. He pulled back to look at her face. Isabella, I don't have words. Scared, yes. Surprised, absolutely. But upset, never. But we didn't plan this. We haven't even been together a year. And with my disability, stop. His voice was firm. Stop listing reasons this is impossible. Tell me what you want. I don't know. Yes, you do. In your gut before all the logic and fear. What do you want? Isabella thought about it. Really thought about it. A baby with Ethan's eyes and stubborn streak. A child raised between two worlds learning about compression ratios and corporate strategies with equal enthusiasm. The challenge, the joy, the absolute terror of it all. I want this, she whispered. I want our baby. Ethan's face transformed, joy breaking through like sunlight. Really? Really? And he kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. When they broke apart, both crying and laughing, he pressed his forehead to hers. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. Our families are going to lose their minds. Oh God, my parents. Jessica's going to claim she knew all along. Tommy's going to make so many inappropriate jokes. They held each other in the dim office, processing the magnitude of what was happening. Outside, life at the garage continued, the sound of power tools, Tommy's colorful cursing, the radio playing classic rock. But inside their bubble, everything had changed. I need to tell you something, Ethan said quietly. I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right time. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Isabella's heart stopped. This isn't because of the baby, he said quickly. I bought this a month ago. I was waiting for... I don't know the perfect moment. But maybe this is it. Maybe there's no perfect moment, just real ones. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was absolutely not what Isabella would have expected. It wasn't a massive diamond or a family heirloom. It was a band of platinum with a gear pattern etched into it, a small but perfect diamond set into the center like a star in machinery. I had it custom made, he said. Tommy knows a jeweler. The gears are from actual watch movements, and the diamond, it's not huge, but it's flawless. Like you. Ethan, marry me. Not because of the baby, not because of what people expect, but because I can't imagine a day without you. Because you make everything better, even the hard stuff. Because I love you exactly as you are, wheels and all. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Yes, Isabella said without hesitation. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, the weight of it unfamiliar, but right. They kissed again, and Isabella thought about how far they'd come from that night at Le Bernardin, two strangers brought together by missed connections and wrong reservations. We should tell people, Ethan said eventually. The baby or the engagement, both. Your family first. They'll be hurt if they hear it from anyone else. Your parents are going to have opinions. My parents always have opinions. Let them. They went back to the garage hand in hand, Isabella's ring catching the afternoon light. Tommy saw it first, his whoop of joy echoing off the concrete walls. Finally, Boss finally grew a pair. Tommy, Miguel chided, but he was grinning too. Congratulations, both of you. Bobby shuffled over, examined the ring with a critical eye. Good work. Clean setting, quality stone. You did good, kid. There's more, Ethan said, and Isabella could see him fighting a smile. We're having a baby. The garage erupted. Tommy actually lifted Isabella out of her chair in a bear hug before Ethan could stop him. Miguel started calculating due dates on his phone. Bobby got suspiciously misty-eyed and blamed it on oil fumes. "This calls for champagne," Tommy declared. "Isabella can't drink," Ethan said protectively. "Then she can watch us drink." To the garage, to the newest member of the Carter family, and to the best wrong date story in history. They ended up at Rosie's, the whole crew plus Jessica, who'd driven from Manhattan at breakneck speed when Ethan called. She cried when she saw the ring, cried harder when they told her about the baby, and then punched Ethan in the arm for making her cry. "I knew it," she said. "That first morning when you didn't come home, I knew this was it. You two just fit." "We don't fit at all," Isabella protested. "We're completely different." "No," Jessica said. "You're complicated in ways that complement each other. That's different from different." And the news spread quickly. Sarah showed up at Rosie's an hour later, having somehow heard through the company gossip network that was more efficient than any official communication channel. "A baby CEO," she said, hugging Isabella carefully. "The board's going to have feelings. The board can deal with it." "And married to your hot mechanic?" "Hey," Ethan protested mildly. "I'm right here." "You are. And you're hot. And you're marrying my boss." I'm processing out loud. Isabella's parents took the news differently as expected. They invited Ethan and Isabella to dinner at their home, the brownstone on the Upper East Side that Isabella had grown up in. The dining room hadn't changed since her childhood. Same portraits of stern ancestors, same china that came out for special occasions, same suffocating formality. "Pregnant," her mother said, as if testing the word. "And unmarried." "Engaged," Isabella corrected, showing the ring. Richard studied the ring with interest. "Unusual design. Custom." "Yes," Ethan said. "I wanted something that represented both of us." "Gears and diamonds," Evelyn murmured. "Rather on the nose, isn't it, Mom?" "I'm simply observing. This is all rather sudden." "Not really," Isabella said. "We've been together nearly 6 months. We know what we want. And what you want is to raise a child while running a company and managing a disability." Richard's tone wasn't cruel, just pragmatic. "Have you thought about the logistics?" "We'll figure it out," Ethan said firmly. "People have been having babies in difficult circumstances since the beginning of time. Most people aren't CEOs of Fortune 500 companies," Evelyn pointed out. "Most people aren't as stubborn as Isabella either," Ethan countered. "She'll make it work because that's what she does. And I'll be there supporting her because that's what I do." There was a long silence. Then Richard did something unexpected. He laughed. "He's got you there, Evelyn. There. Our daughter is nothing if not stubborn." He looked at Ethan with something approaching approval. "You know what you're signing up for, the media attention, the scrutiny, the complications of Isabella's position." "I know she's worth it," Ethan said simply. "And the pregnancy?" Evelyn asked. "The risks?" "We have the best doctors," Isabella said, "the best support system, and we have each other." Her mother sighed, a sound of resignation mixed with something else. "I suppose congratulations are in order then. Though I do hope you'll have a proper wedding, not some courthouse affair." "We haven't decided," Isabella began. "St. Bartholomew's is lovely for summer weddings," Evelyn continued as if Isabella hadn't spoken. "Though given your condition, we'll need to ensure accessibility, and the reception could be at the plaza." "Mom." "Let her plan," Richard said quietly to Isabella. "It makes her happy. You can always elope and not tell her." Ethan nearly choked on his wine. The spring months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments. Wedding discussions that Isabella mostly let Jessica and her mother handle, and the continuing rhythm of their dual lives. Isabella worked reduced hours on doctor's orders, spending more time at the garage where she could sit and work on cars without the stress of board meetings. The automotive division's New Direction was a massive success, with pre-orders for their electric conversion kits exceeding projections by 300%. Ethan, Tommy, and Miguel had become the faces of the campaign Real Mechanics, showing that electric could have soul, that innovation didn't mean abandoning tradition. "You're getting famous," Isabella told Ethan one evening, showing him a magazine profile. "They're calling you the Brooklyn philosopher of cars. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're quoted extensively about the marriage of old and new technology." "I was probably drunk." "You were definitely sober. It was during the investor presentation." He groaned, burying his face in her growing belly. "Your mom is never going to let me be just a mechanic." "Our baby," Isabella corrected, running her fingers through his hair. "And you're not just anything. You're everything." The baby kicked, then strong enough for Ethan to feel. His face transformed with wonder, the same expression every time. "She's strong." Or he. She. "I can feel it." Isabella didn't argue. Secretly, she thought he was right. There was something about this baby that felt fierce and determined, already a fighter like her father. The wedding, when it came in July, was neither the society event Evelyn wanted, nor the courthouse elopement Richard had suggested. Instead, they married in the rooftop garden of the building that housed the garage, with the city skyline as their backdrop, and their merged families as witnesses. Isabella wore a dress that accommodated both her wheelchair and her 7-month pregnancy bump. Ethan wore a suit, but refused to wear a tie, claiming it was too hot. Tommy was the best man and cried through the entire ceremony. Sarah was the maid of honor and managed the logistics with military precision. "Do you, Ethan James Carter, take Isabella Marie Grant to be your wife in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" "Every day for the rest of my life," Ethan said, ignoring the traditional response. "Do you, Isabella Marie Grant, take Ethan James Carter to be your husband in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" "With my whole heart, yes." They kissed as the sun set over Manhattan, and their families cheered. Even Evelyn was crying, though she claimed it was allergies. The reception was at Gino's, because where else would it be? Nonna Rosa had closed the restaurant for them, decorating with lights and flowers that transformed the space while keeping its essential character. The food was endless, the wine flowed sparkling cider for Isabella, and Tommy's speech was surprisingly touching, despite containing 3 separate compression ratio jokes. "To Ethan and Isabella," Jessica said, raising her glass, "who proved that sometimes the best things come from showing up at the wrong place at exactly the right time." They danced to "Stand By Me," the song from their first dance at Rosie's. Ethan held Isabella as they swayed her belly between them, the baby kicking in what felt like rhythm. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Only one." His face fell. "What? I can't drink the champagne. This baby better be worth it." He laughed, spinning her carefully. "She will be. So certain it's a girl." Father's intuition. 2 months later, Ethan's intuition proved correct. Sophia Marie Carter arrived during a September thunderstorm, screaming, and perfect, and absolutely determined to do things her own way. The delivery was complicated, requiring an emergency C-section that had Ethan pale with fear despite Isabella's assurances. But when the doctor placed their daughter on Isabella's chest, all the fear and pain disappeared. Sophia had Ethan's dark hair and Isabella's green eyes, and a grip that suggested she'd inherited both parents' stubbornness. "She's perfect," Ethan whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Of course she is. Look at her parents." The garage crew arrived en masse the next day, despite hospital visiting hours. Tommy brought a tiny leather jacket with "Future Mechanic" embroidered on the back. Miguel had already started a college fund. Bobby brought coffee for everyone and held Sophia with the practiced ease of a grandfather. "She's going to be trouble," he pronounced. "I can see it in her eyes." "The best kind of trouble," Jessica agreed, already completely smitten with her niece. Isabella's parents came too, and watching her mother hold Sophia with undisguised joy, Isabella felt something shift and settle. This wasn't the life anyone had planned, but it was theirs, complicated and messy and perfect. 6 weeks later, they announced the Carter Foundation at a Grant Innovations press conference. The foundation would provide training and apprenticeships in automotive restoration for underprivileged youth, with a special focus on adaptive technologies for disabled mechanics. "Why should cars be the only things that get second chances?" Ethan said, when asked about the foundation's mission. "Everyone deserves the opportunity to rebuild." Isabella watched from the side, Sophia sleeping in her arms, as her husband fielded questions with increasing confidence. He'd come so far from the man who'd been intimidated by her world. But then she'd come far too from the woman who'd thought her life was over because she couldn't walk. The truth was, they'd rebuilt each other. Ethan had shown her that broken didn't mean worthless, that different could be beautiful, that love wasn't about being perfect, but about being present. She'd shown him that his worth wasn't tied to what he could fix, that vulnerability was strength, that he deserved to be loved for who he was, not what he could do for others. "Mrs. Carter," a reporter called out, using her married name, which she'd kept for personal use while remaining Grant professionally. "How do you balance everything, the company, the foundation, motherhood, marriage?" Isabella adjusted Sophia in her arms, feeling the weight of her daughter, the ring on her finger, the fullness of a life she'd never imagined. "I don't balance it," she said honestly. "I live it. All of it all at once. It's messy and imperfect and absolutely worth it." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if your original blind date had shown up that night?" another reporter asked. Isabella found Ethan's eyes across the room. He was smiling that crooked smile that still made her heart race. "Never," she said. "That disaster was my destiny." Later, after the press had gone and the garage was quiet except for the sound of Bobby's ancient radio playing oldies, Isabella sat in the office that had been Ethan's father's, was now theirs, would maybe one day be Sophia's. The walls were covered with new photos, now their wedding. Sophia's first day home, the team at various celebrations. Ethan found her there, bringing coffee and the comfortable silence of a couple who'd learned each other's rhythms. "Good day," he said, not a question, but an observation. "The best," Isabella agreed. Sophia stirred in her carrier, making the small sounds that preceded either sleep or screaming. Ethan picked her up with the same gentle confidence he brought to everything, swaying slightly as he held her. "What are you thinking about?" Isabella asked. "That night at Le Bernardin. How angry I was that Jessica had set me up, how I almost didn't go in when I realized I had the wrong day." "But you did go in." "I did. Best mistake I ever made." He looked at their daughter, then at Isabella. "Do you believe in fate?" Isabella considered. "I believe in showing up, in taking chances, in being open to unexpected possibilities." "That's a very CEO answer." "Fine. Yes, I believe in fate. I believe you were meant to walk into that restaurant exactly when you did. I believe we were meant to find each other, to build this life, to have this beautiful, stubborn child who's going to rule the world someday. Or at least the garage." Why not both? Ethan laughed and Sophia settled at the sound content in her father's arms. Outside, Queens was settling into evening, the garage closing for the day, the city beginning its nighttime transformation. But inside their small office, their unexpected kingdom, everything was exactly as it should be. Isabella thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, broken in body and spirit, convinced that love and family were casualties of her accident. That woman couldn't have imagined this husband-child, a life that spanned from Queens to Manhattan, from carburetors to corporate boards. But that woman had done one brave thing. She'd said yes to dinner with a stranger who showed up at the wrong time. She'd chosen possibility over safety, connection over isolation. And that one choice had changed everything. "I love you," she told Ethan, because it never got old saying it or hearing it. "I love you too," he replied, then grinned. "Even if you did make me wear a suit to the press conference. You look good in a suit. I look better covered in motor oil." That too. They stayed in the office as night fell, their small family complete, their unlikely love story now simply their life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Sophia was already showing signs of her parents' strong wills. The foundation would need careful management, and the balance between their worlds would require constant adjustment. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. Not perfect in the magazine cover social media worthy way, but perfect in the real way, messy and complicated and absolutely right. The blind date disaster had become their beginning. The paralyzed CEO and the Brooklyn mechanic had become simply Isabella and Ethan, and the life they'd built from missed connections and brave choices had become exactly what they'd both needed all along. As Sophia slept and the city hummed its eternal song outside, Isabella reached for Ethan's hand, the one not holding their daughter, and squeezed. He squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was everything: love, partnership, family, future. The woman in the wheelchair and the man in work boots building their empire of second chances and unexpected joy one day at a time.